Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. І хто воде всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back today at 9:25 The News. And it's good to see you all once again. And we have confirmation from General Syrsky today that Ukraine has stopped the Russian advance in Pokrovsk, and it's a very good day for the Ukrainians. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, as official confirmation has come out today, just hours ago, from the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrsky, that the Pokrovsk offensive has been stopped dead in its tracks by the Ukrainian army, and the Russian meat grinder that has been advancing ever so gradually from Avdiivka towards Pokrovsk has ended up stopping today, thanks to the Ukrainian army and its heavy defenses east of the city of Pokrovsk. We are going to be covering that in extremely high detail tonight, as much as we can, actually, but there are loads of other pieces of news that we have to cover as well. We have also been able to hear of a major explosion happening inside the city of Tula after a Ukrainian drone or a partisan attack, the exact reason is unknown at the moment, ended up striking the factory and causing an extremely large fire to erupt onto the facility and knocking it out. That facility, very important to the war effort. We were also able to hear confirmation today and geolocation that the drones that were shot down last night over Gomel were shot down on the western side of the city, and we were also able to have confirmation from the Belarusian air defense that they did engage and shoot down drones, but they markedly did not state whose drones they were, heavily leading us to believe that those were the Russians' drones that were flying over Gomel, due to the omission of who actually owned and flew those drones. We also got really big news today from the Bakhmut and Chasa and the Severonsky forest areas, as we did get to see a larger amount of combat footage in these areas than we've seen in the past, and we were able to get a little bit of better battle analysis for that reason. We were also able to see that a massive attack happened on the port of Novorossiysk by Ukrainian naval drones, and it seems that the damage has not been calculated at the moment, but we were able to get confirmation that the attack did in fact happen, while at the same time we were also able to see that the Russians are once again conducting almost suicidal frontline charges towards the city of Volodar, again within Ukraine's southern region, trying to break through and take this massive fortress of a small town within the area of southern Donetsk. And we have absolutely loads of news to cover tonight. It is absolutely insane, the amount of quality and the amount of detail that we were actually able to get in tonight's news. Unlike other nights where usually a lot of the big news topics are happening outside of Ukraine, inside of the Russian Federation, or somewhere in the surrounding area, tonight's big news topics are mostly inside of Ukraine, and kind of returning back to the bread and butter of what this channel really used to do back at the beginning of the war, when the front lines were very fluid, which is a lot of frontline analysis. And we will be able to get into loads of that tonight. But moving on into our first and major breaking piece of news, the Pokrovsk offensive was stopped dead in its tracks today. The official statement did come out from the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, Oleksandr Syrsky, today. The Ukraine has stopped the Russian advance in the Pokrovsk direction, and in the last 6 days, they have not moved a single meter, according to the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces, Oleksandr Syrsky. This is a massive statement to make, as the Russian offensive in this area, from what we understand, was one of the largest ones. In fact, according to the numbers, it was the largest one of the offensive. It ended up gaining a sizable amount of ground, and then it ended up fizzling out and dying right outside of Pokrovsk, about 6 miles away, where we see it right now. This is big news, because with the Russians being stopped in this area, it's showing us that the Russians can really be stopped just about anywhere, because this was the biggest offensive that we had ever seen so far, and we have loads of footage today showing that that offensive was not really going that well for them. And so let me make sure that we get all of this in line correctly, and we do have it in line correctly. So starting off today with just a little bit of an appetizer, we did get to see that a Russian KAMAZ near to the area of Berdichi was plastered today by a Ukrainian FPV drone and ended up burning into a cinder. Not really a lot to go off of here. It was carrying a D-30 or a D-20 artillery piece behind it, but that's not really the big fry, right? You know, that's not really the thing that would really get people excited about this front. But what if I told you that the Russians have been stopped so significantly over the past 48 hours that the Ukrainians have been able to steal a Russian T-72 on the front line and literally bring it over to the Ukrainian side today. We got to see that happening in 2 separate clips. And so I'm going to be showing you all the first one where the Ukrainians successfully captured this Russian T-72. It was abandoned in the middle of the fighting in perfect running order. It had sustained minimal damage, if any, and a Ukrainian infantry group ran up to the tank, hopped inside of it, revved up the engine, and just drove it away and right into the Ukrainian lines, where it is now going to be repurposed and put into a Ukrainian armored unit to fight against the Russians, most likely within this front line. So here's the clip. And there it is.
Танк, спиздила танк у россиян, второй
Man, that's a big loss for the Russians.
Спиздили, красавцы. Просто красавцы, спиздили танк.
Man, it sounds like a celebration in the break room out here in this command center.
Man, it is a celebration in the break room, because you just don't see stuff that is just this great in a lot of times. Also, by the way, to clarify this, the one that's captured is the one in the back that has this turret tilted off to the right side with the gun elevated at a high angle. That is the one because it does not have a gunner or a commander inside the tank. It's just an infantryman serving as the driver, so the turret is completely inoperable at the point that this video was made. But they still stole the thing. I mean, they literally stole it off the front line. And I heard that the Russian spokesperson for the group army that is currently conducting this offensive action within the area of Pokrovsk said, "Men can't have shit in Pokrovsk," or something along those lines. But we also got to see that the Ukrainians then started to inspect the trophy tank after it had been taken. So let me show you this clip right here. And so but we can see the bridge near to the area of Mikhailivka. And we see one of the Ukrainian tanks that we saw from yesterday. That's actually the Russian main battle tank right there. It appears to be some kind of a T-72 of a sort. We can see the one Ukrainian tank laying out smoke. We can now see artillery rounds impacting in front of that tank as the Ukrainians get this thing on the road and try and get it the hell out of there. And now we can finally see that T-72, having been stolen, being driven out of the area as the Russians try and shell them on their way out. And here it is. It is.
Oh, man. It's in relatively good shape.
It's in pretty good shape, actually. It's in running order, which is like the craziest thing about it, because it was right under the bridge where we saw yesterday that MTLB had that gas fire. Remember that, Matthew? And it was burning everywhere under that bridge. This tank was there, and it was stuck under the bridge during that time. And so it's pretty wild to see that it ended up surviving the blaze without burning down itself. We also saw that they ended up conducting a couple of additional modifications to the armor layout of this T-72B3 before it was captured on the Russian side. They added these rubber flaps, which are supposed to help with trying to stop anti-tank guided missiles. Do they really do that incredibly well? And it's questionable. But then they also added something of like a cope cage shed sort of a modification to the back of the turret, probably to protect it against drones, or maybe to serve doubly as some form of a ad hoc armored personnel carrier on top of a main battle tank. But still, we can see them looking up and down it, and it's a running T-72B3. These aren't really that common. They're actually getting a little bit rare at this point in the war, because T-72s, or that series of tank, has ended up suffering the highest losses in numbers on the Russian side during the war.
You would think before the Russians run off and abandon this thing or whatever, you'd think they would try to explode it or blow it up or something so the Ukrainians couldn't get it, but I guess these guys didn't get the chance.
Nah, it doesn't really seem as though they get the chance, Blade. I don't think they ever will at this point. But a big shout out to the Kara Dog unit that did end up capturing that T-72 in that area. A pretty amazing stunt, a pretty amazing feat at that. And you don't really see things like this happening often. And it was once again showing us that the Russians are getting stopped in their tracks dead enough that the battlefields of yesterday are the front lines of today. And the Ukrainians, for that reason, are able to run up there and actually grab running Russian equipment because the front line has stopped that well. We also got to see a couple of other things come out of the area today on top of that. For example, we got to see that a Russian soldier dropped a drone around this area. Now, I can't show you all this clip that I'm mentioning here, but I'll try and explain it to y'all as best I can. I don't know if I'll be able to get the wordage correct on this, but a Russian soldier was running down this road towards this town in trying to run away from a Ukrainian FPV drone. Now, the FPV drone ended up playing around a little bit too much around the guy, and he actually ended up just reaching out with his hand and grabbing it, and so thus stopping himself from being able to be blown up. The guy was walking, and I don't know what happened, but it looked like he looked down to tie his shoe or something, and he dropped the drone, and as soon as he did, the RPG-7 warhead that was underslung on the drone made contact with the ground and blew up right on his feet. So, you know, that guy didn't have that great of a day. But beyond that, it happened around right here. So I can't show y'all the actual video because it's too graphic, but I can show y'all where the geolocation was, which it was within this area, showing that the Russian front line is somewhere around here at this point. But moving on out of that, and once again further on down and towards that little railway bridge that we see at Mikhailivka, we did get to see the Ukrainians once again heading up and attempting to clear the bridge today after they stole the tank. The tank was right about here, and the tank is, of course, now gone, like y'all saw in the last video. So now the Ukrainians have sent up another vehicle to try and clear the path out of all of the burned APCs and such things that are here in this area. They actually sent a Brim. And we can see it's a Brim engineering vehicle, and it's using its plow to be able to shove around the carcasses of these Russian vehicles and try and clear a path under the bridge for the other Ukrainian forces to try and advance onto the side a lot easier.
They're also coming back to make sure they didn't miss anything. There might be some other stuff to take.
Man, they're coming out here like it's a used car lot. They're like, let's see, MTLB? Yeah, I'll pass. Not really good. High mileage probably, too. Chris's mom?
I like that thing. It just comes out here, does the job, and then scoots right off.
Yeah, it really does, man. It's like one of those little RC excavator toys. You know, you just drive it up there, do whatever you want, and then drive it away. It's really simple, actually. It's really, really nice, actually. Streamlined, even. But, man, like, you know, they come out here, they say, MTLB, high mileage. Chris's mom, really high mileage. Oh, boy. Or something like that. It's like, I don't want that one. But still, really cool to see that engineering vehicle trying to clear a path. But once again, all of this activity that we're seeing over the past 24 hours is strongly leading us to indicate or know, really, or to possess the knowledge, probably a better way to put it, the Russians have stopped their advance. And let me explain why that would make sense off of the videos that we're seeing today. The Russians slowly were moving forward up until maybe about 3 days ago, clearly, in every direction, down towards Karlivka and also towards Pokrovsk as well. And the Ukrainians were having to fall back day by day. And because they were having to fall back day by day, they were never able to be in the same spot the next day to be able to try and grab anything or do anything in those areas. They were constantly moving backwards west towards Pokrovsk. But over the past 24 hours, we're seeing loads of clips that are lining up with everything we saw yesterday. The exact same places the Ukrainians were. And on top of that, Russian vehicles that were being abandoned, they're now being overrun by the Russian army for the Russian tank crew to come back up and repossess that tank for the Russian army. The front line is now so stagnant in this area, and it's sitting at a standstill that when that tank is abandoned, the Russians aren't controlling that area tomorrow. It's still no man's land, and the Ukrainians were able to run up there, grab the tank, and then bring it back to their own lines. So all this evidence that we're getting today, video picture evidence, is clearly indicating to us that the Russian Federation's offensive in the Pokrovsk direction has been completely stopped. And it is a very huge success. No one really expected this offensive to be stopped at this point. We're not really sure, like I was saying last night, whether it's going to be a semi-permanent stop or a permanent stop to this offensive. We really don't know. If the Russians put a lot of effort into this area, they might be able to make it a semi-permanent stoppage of a sort. They might be able to begin the offensive tempo again and get this thing really rolling, but we'll kind of have to wait and see how this actually turns out. But one thing I would also like to say is that we covered this last night, actually. A lot of people may have noticed that or heard that last night, that we said that the Russian offensive in this area had stopped. The reason why we came back and circled around the story is because we got a lot of video and picture evidence today to confirm that that's true, and we also got official confirmation from Syrsky that that is true. But I want to say this really quickly, not to toot our own horn, but I do feel a point of pride whenever things like this come around, and I want to make this a little bit clear for everyone here. A lot of people are always saying that this channel is saying things that are non-corroborated. They're not true. They are lying. Although we have video and picture evidence for everything that we say, or we have very good analysis that we're working off of, that's pretty logical. There's always a large amount of detractors that are always saying that this channel is not really the most truthful. And I just want to put this out there. We said that the offensive had been stopped by the Ukrainians 12 hours before the Ukrainian army even said that they had stopped the offensive. Our analysis is pretty freaking solid. Like, I'm going to have to say that at this point. it seems as though we usually are able to hit things dead on the nail before they even come around. Like, we beat mainstream news pretty much every day of the week on every single topic. And not only that, we're beating the Ukrainian army at this point on putting out statements like that. So I would have to say we're not doing that bad. Not to toot the channel's own whistle or anything, that's largely for y'all to do if y'all really did enjoy the channel, but I still wanted to point that one out because we beat everyone to the punch on that like normal, and then everyone plays catch up, and then for some reason we still get discredited at the end of the day, although we're doing analysis quicker than anyone else can, by at least half a day or longer than that. But anyways, this offensive does appear to have finally been stopped, which is really the big point of the day, and it's the really important one. And also, it seems as though that this may be a part, at least with Ukraine stopping the Russians today in Pokrovsk, this may be a part of a bigger kind of a message that the Ukrainian government is attempting to send to the Russian nation. Not really the Russian government, but the Russian nation, and hoping that it'll have some form of an effect. Zelensky has said today that his end game for the entirety of the war is to force the Russians to see the futility of this war and to withdraw their forces from Ukraine, thus ending the war completely and permanently for that matter. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on this idea or this war goal of Zelensky's to really just drag on the war well enough that it will be viewed as futile by the Russian government. They will never be able to achieve their actual objectives inside of Ukraine, and so it's best to quit because they'll just never be able to win. And it seems like a lot of people are not really believing that that would be a likely option in this war. It seems like a lot of people are actually saying that the Russians may never leave. They may just keep this going on forever, and the Ukrainians may end up having to forcibly push them out. Some people are saying that the Russians will eventually realize and withdraw quickly, but still it seems like there's a lot of people with a lot of different takes and opinions on this at the moment about what is Zelensky's end game, and is it really a feasible one? Is it really even viable, or is it not? And Matthew, what are people thinking and saying about that, and what are you thinking? Do you think that that's a viable end goal, or is everyone else thinking that that's a viable end goal for the war?
All right, so today we got a little glimpse into Zelensky's mindset as to what his end game really is in this war. So, like the Enforcer said, he said his end game is to force Russia to see the futility of the war and withdraw their troops. So basically what he's saying here is he's trying to expect that Putin's going to use logic and basically do the right thing. So the question is he going to do that? So 49% said Russia will never withdraw voluntarily, and 29% said Russia will realize and withdraw eventually, and 13% said, that really sounds like a political answer from Zelensky and probably not the truth. But on this one, I gotta say that if Putin is in charge of Russia, there will be no logical thinking when it comes to Ukraine, because the entire war is illogical. So to suddenly think that that Putin is going to use logic and withdraw troops after he sees it's futile, that goes against pretty much everything we've seen thus far. So I'm actually with the 50%. I don't think Russia will ever withdraw voluntarily. They may ultimately decide to make peace in some way or another if they start losing so many guys that they start running out and they can't get any more. But I think as long as Putin has equipment and manpower at his disposal, he will keep throwing that at the meat grinder and keep going. I just don't see it stopping anytime soon while Putin's in charge. So we're waiting to see if there's going to be some type of ousting of Putin from his office. Otherwise, it's probably going to keep going. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I don't believe the Russians would ever really withdraw voluntarily. That seems to me to be a bit of a difficult sale, in my opinion, for what the Russians would really do. Because from what we know, the Russians are in a pretty tough state, but the reality is that if they really wanted to just tighten up the belt, move on to another belt loop on the belt buckle of a sort, they can keep this war going for quite a while. They won't have a lot of equipment, but they still have an endless amount of manpower compared to Ukraine that they could just keep throwing at this, meaning that this could go on for years in that sort of a sense. Ukraine would have to be fighting on the technological end of things because they clearly do not have the manpower that the Russians have, so they have to win just really by superior firepower than by absolute mass and numbers. But the Russians are playing the numbers game like they always have. Just throw enough people at it and eventually you'll be able to overrun them. We don't know how long they can really do that, but it could go on for a good while. And on top of that, if the Russians really wanted to, and this may be one of the likely options here, we're starting to talk about it in this sense, is that this could end up just freezing, and it could end up turning into the Donbass like it was in between 2016 to 2022, where it's an active war zone, but there's not really a lot of active fighting going on, if y'all know what I mean. The Russians could just sit here and just wait. And they would not be conducting any major offensives any longer. They would just be sitting there and waiting it out. And if Ukraine wants their land back, at that point, it's actually going to be on the Ukrainians to conduct offensives to push the Russians out. And the Russians will have plenty of time during those moments, those years, to be able to build up some of the most formidable and the largest amounts of defensive networks that we've ever seen probably in the modern age in this century. And that means that pushing the Russians out would end up becoming fairly difficult. So in reality, what this could start to turn into is a pretty long war, an incredibly long one, where we see a much lower intensity fighting than we have in the past, because the reality is that both sides probably can't keep up this kind of intensity for years, so it'll probably start to drop off in intensity, and we'll just see that these front lines end up solidifying for an incredibly long time until there's a government change in Russia or until Ukraine gives up, one or the other. I don't think the Ukrainians will be giving up, though, because they do have a large amount of support from the West. We don't really expect that to change anytime soon, and I know a lot of people are about to bring up the tried and true question, well, what about the election? It's not going to be changing. I don't even want to go down that discussion because we don't do politics on this channel, but to cut it short, that will not be changing. Some people think it will not. I promise you all that. Nothing would change about that at all. And so from what we know, Western support's largely guaranteed indefinitely for Ukraine. So in that kind of a sense, considering that the Russians are fighting a manpower game, if they're able to lower the intensity of the fighting, they can stretch out the manpower side of things for a very long time, as long as they're able to mitigate the casualties. For Ukraine, as long as they're getting Western support and they're able to keep up that superior firepower, and what I mean by that's really the drone forces, as long as they're able to keep that up pretty well, and they're able to sustain their artillery, anti-tank, and counter-battery forces, and really just their infantry and armor as much as needed, they can keep their side of the war going for an incredibly long time as well. So from what I can tell, if we're going off of that kind of a mindset and that kind of an end goal to just attrit the Russians until they give up, this could go on for years. I mean, it really could. And this could end up becoming...
And also...
Go ahead.
And also, once you add in, like, for example, China giving indirect support to Russia, North Korea doing it, and also Iran doing it, the entire axis of evil is giving some sort of support to Russia. It's not quite as powerful as the Western support for Ukraine, but it is enough to help keep them going. And like the Enforcer said, if they can lower down the amount of manpower they need to keep fighting the war and sort of reel things back a little bit, they can definitely drag it out. And I think, honestly, that would be what Russia is going to probably go for. They're going to try to drag this out because they see that throwing endless amounts of troops right now, they're throwing a hell of a lot of troops into the meat grinder. It's not really getting them anywhere, not like they would expect to get. So I think their only option is to drag it out and hope that Ukraine eventually gets tired of the war and they can't keep going anymore and just try to wear them out. I think that's what they're going for.
That's probably a way that the Russians are trying to go about this. But really quickly, I see some people in the chat, and I would see where y'all are coming from a little bit. Some people are butting the idea, oh, wait a minute, no. The Russians can't keep going forever because, like you said, Enforcer, their economy is falling in on itself. And it really is. Like, I can't deny that. And also the Russian fuel industry is also caving in on itself. But let's take a step back here. All right, let's go to the old-fashioned analysis that we used to do on this channel, and we're actually going to do something that we rarely ever do on this channel, which is we're going to analyze this from the Russian side of things instead of the Ukrainian side, and we're going to try and war game out on this channel what the Russians might do to be able to try and drag this war out and eventually just outlast Western support for Ukraine to where they could eventually win. So let's do that. Let's try and work on that kind of an analysis. So right now, this is the situation that the Russians are looking at. They're having to keep a fairly sizable force, probably about 6 or 7 brigades inside the Kursk Oblast right now to contain the Ukrainian offensive here and to stop them from advancing any further. So that means that about 7 to 8 combat brigades or combined arms brigades are currently being held up in this area, and of course all the battalion tactical groups that would make up those combined arms brigades. They also have to keep a 1 combined arms brigade down in Belgrade to try and contain this area. They also have several brigades, not really that many, it's like 2 or 3 at this point in the Vovchansk area, trying to hold the area that they gained during that offensive, and then they pretty much have the bulk of the combat forces of the Russian army and the Russian armed forces as a whole currently inside of Ukraine at the moment. Beyond that, they are stretched for manpower. There's no additional strategic reserves of combined arms brigades to work off of at this point to conduct any new offensives or to start any kind of new and bold offensive action to try and really break up this war. So right now, what they have to do is that they have to be able to sustain, not grow and not improve, but just sustain. And sustaining is really pretty difficult at this point. The Russians are losing in the numbers about 1,400 guys per day, wounded and killed. That means that every single 2 days, they're having to completely replace a combined arms brigade of the Russian army on the small end. And so that's a pretty big drain when you think about it, losing an entire brigade over 48 hours, every 48 hours, every month of every year. And so the Russians will have to be able to recruit and train to a minimum quality about 3,000 troops every 48 hours and have those ready to be replenishing the front lines every single 2-hour period. So if they're able to keep up that kind of a number, just getting into the Russian army, and of course, replacing the attrition that they have to deal with naturally of people reaching the end of their conscription time, which is about a year at this point, and getting out of the military, they have to force those people into either signing contracts, or they have to find some other way to try and keep them around. They also have to try and find other ways to extend the service or try and make sure to deny people exit of the service to once again try and lower their natural attrition rate of people coming into the armed forces and leaving. So then with this in mind, we know that the Russians, as long as they're able to keep about maybe 4,000 new people getting into the military in fighting, in more so in combat condition, into the Russian army every 48 hours, they can actually sustain the losses they're keeping right now. It's a really high number, but still it's possible that they could do that over a longer period of time because they still have a pretty decent manpower pool to draw from. Now, the Russian economy, on the other hand, is not the same story. It is very bad off, and it's continuing to spiral day by day. But one thing that we've started to learn a little bit, especially the Ukrainians have started to point this out quite well, is that the Russian consumer side of the economy, which makes up a large part of the GDP and also the quality of life, is the one that's declining rapidly. The one that doesn't really seem to be dropping off that much is the Russians' ability to produce war materials. They're not advanced by any measure, like they're not producing an incredibly large sum of main battle tanks, and they're also not producing any new fighter aircraft in any incredibly large numbers. They're producing about, I think it's something like 4 new fighter aircraft a month, which is incredibly small. And also on top of that, we have not heard of them producing any new tanks, and we've heard of a very low number being refurbished into some sort of a modern condition or a usable condition at that, even from older stocks. So from what we know, they are running out of tanks. No matter how much they refurbish, they will probably not have a lot of tanks to go forward. And while they may have some artillery, or they were able to streamline the shell production inside of the Russian Federation, we understand that they produce about 50,000 shells a month. They're running out of artillery pieces to use those in. And so while they may be producing a lot of shells, they're not producing a lot of artillery pieces. And so the Russians are being whittled down throughout the war into losing all of their offensive weaponry. Offensive weaponry are tanks and artillery for the large part that support the infantry through heavier firepower in their advance. And if the Russians are lacking heavy amounts of artillery and tanks in the future, their battle doctrine is already going to have to shift, or more so their strategy will have to shift into a defensive one, because they don't have any materials to conduct a major offensive with. So once again, they just have to pour more people into the army and not really conduct any major offensives and just sit there. They can, however, produce things that would help them out greatly in a defensive. Concrete production, from what we know in Russia, hasn't really been curtailed that much. And concrete production is very important in producing bunkers, producing dragon's teeth, and then they're also able to produce anti-tank mines in fairly large numbers still, and have an incredibly large stockpile of those left over from Soviet times. So using a decent amount of concrete and a decent amount of anti-tank mines, they can end up setting up a decent defensive position throughout the entirety of the Donbass, much like they did in Zaporizhia with the Surovikin line, and possibly stop the Ukrainians from easily ever conducting a major offensive. So now that we've war-gamed out the Russian side of things, and while their economy is certainly in shambles, the Navy inside the Black Sea is non-existent, they're still able to just hang in a little bit and try and keep this war going. And this is, of course, removing any civil aspect from this at all. This is just talking about the military aspect, and assuming that everything would go perfectly in Russia, they would be able to hold on. But if there was any kind of riots, if there was any kind of a coup d'etat against the Russian government, all of that would change overnight. But then moving back to the Ukrainian side and working off of this mindset that the Russians would be able not to really flourish, but they would be able to hang in, the Ukrainians then have to work off of a mindset of, we have to push them out or we have to outlast them. And so now it's completely entering a war of attrition. And so the Ukrainians would still rely on a decent amount of Western support to be able to keep their armed forces running. Soviet ammunition is not anything that Ukraine produces, at least in the modern day in large numbers. And so as the war keeps on going, they will have to integrate more Western tech into their armed forces and continue to draw on Western supplies and Western arms production to be able to keep their armed forces running, at least in limited figures. The Ukrainians will also have to rely on their cheap and advanced technologies like FPV drones to be able to continue to have an upper hand advantage on the Russians, because while the Russians are able to pour thousands of men in forms of manpower into their front lines every day, and if they wanted to keep that up throughout the rest of the war, the Ukrainians don't have that kind of a luxury. Ukraine is already talking about, and has been talking about for a while, conscription has been fairly difficult because their manpower pool is starting to run a little thin. And so because of that reason, we know that the Ukrainians are not going to be dealing on the manpower game like the Russians will, like I explained a moment ago, about how they could last in the war. Ukraine is going to have to work on the war production side of things heavily, and to make sure that it's as efficient and cheap as possible, to have as many FPV drones as capable, and to have as many people as possible operating those drones, or to try and streamline the technology where it requires less people to field a larger number of drones. That's most likely the direction that they'll be heading in, and then that will be, of course, augmented by a lot of real, like physical armed support in terms of artillery support, tanks, and infantry, but not in incredibly large numbers like we would see on the Russian side. The Ukrainians could also try and set up some pretty strong defensive networks just to ensure that the Russians never try an offensive again, but for the Ukrainians that would largely be a low priority because they're going to be focusing on a Russia that is now trying to stick in place and hold the ground they have instead of pushing forward and trying to take new ground. So now the Ukrainians are in the perspective that if they really want to achieve this goal, they're going to have to push the Russians out. It's not going to be the Russians having to defeat Ukraine. It's actually going to have to be Ukraine pushing the Russians out of Ukraine and defeating them. And so now with the Russians sitting there, pretty much lying in wait in a defensive, and also with the Ukrainians not really having a large amount of manpower, the Ukrainians are going to have to really focus on superior firepower doctrine, meaning that they'll have to find a way to have enough munitions of all types, both for their aircraft, the artillery, the drones, the infantry, the tanks, everything in between, to be able to uproot the Russians from their defensive position or overwhelm specific points on that defensive line and then push them out because of that reason by conducting a breakthrough. And that would be pretty tough for Ukraine to do. So they would the Ukrainians would endlessly be building up equipment and arms to be able to try and conduct an offensive like that, and maybe pull one off like that here and there. But for Ukraine to retake all of their land, or for Ukraine to take large swaths of ground back, for the Russians to eventually give up and quit, that probably would take years. And of course, I'm saying all of this going off of an idea that Zelensky's end goal is what the Ukrainians are working with right now, and what the Russians understand the Ukrainians are trying to do, and they're working off of that as well. So this is all based on Zelensky's statement. I still believe that there's a way to end the war in less time, and that may be what both sides are still trying to do. But at this point, going off of Zelensky's statement, that would be the kind of wargaming and analysis that I would make about what would be happening in the future and how both sides would start to tailor their exact way that they're fighting this war to be able to try and last for the long run. And so I
just don't think that Ukraine, no matter how hard Ukraine fights, they're never going to be able to fully overwhelm the Russians, throwing people into the meat grinder endlessly. That's just not going to be a winning strategy, in my opinion. I think what Ukraine was doing by attacking the oil refineries as well as the depots and trying to hurt Russia's economy that was the strongest way that Ukraine had to try to put a dent in Russia's war machine. Because on the front line, they're fighting. Ukraine's fighting very good. Like, make no mistake about it, they're fighting very valiantly. And while they are taking some losses, they're dramatically less than what the Russians are taking. But it's still a very hard fight nonetheless. But I think if they were to continue taking out the oil refineries and try to hit them where it really hurts in the pocketbook, that's where Ukraine really has the biggest possibility for success. And unfortunately, it seems like those attacks have kind of gone down a little bit. Like, it seems like Ukraine's not focusing on that entirely. They're still hitting them occasionally, but not as much as they were in the same frequency. So, in my opinion, they should go back to that because that's their best hope.
I would agree. Really trying to attack the Russians' ability to wage war is probably the best move for the Ukrainians. I think that they should really double down on that, and not only double down on it, but literally lay waste to Russian war industry of any type, whether it be fuel production, fuel storage, or munitions production, or anything along those lines. Those should be priority targets for the Ukrainians. Really specifically the oil side of things, because if you run out of fuels, you pretty much cease to exist as a country in the modern day, because you can't even transport the stuff you're producing at these factories to their endpoint at the front lines, and you can't even produce additional supplies and then ship them to that factory to be turned into war materials. So going off of that, I would say that that would be a really good winning goal for the Ukrainians to try as well, because if they can attrit them like that, they would be able to end the war a lot quicker, even if the Russians dug in and tried to conduct a defensive and not conduct any offensive operations beyond this point. But
I just wonder why they kind of like slowed down the attacks on these refineries, because, we had heard a while back that the U.S. was basically telling Ukraine, stop doing that, stop hitting refineries, because that's going to mess up the oil situation and it's going to cause our gas prices to go up. So don't hit the Russian oil. And Ukraine at first was like, hey, wait a minute, we got to fight our war and we got to do what we got to do to survive. And then they kind of started slowly giving in just a little bit, I think, at least from what I saw. And I'm wondering if maybe that's the reason why they're not hitting the refineries the same way they were, is because basically the U.S. said, you're sort of pissing us off a little bit. You're going to hurt us. Don't keep doing that. And maybe Ukraine listened. Whatever the case is, if they're running out of long-range munitions, which I'm not sure if that's really the case, they need to go back to it, because Ukraine needs to think about themselves first. And the U.S., their opinion kind of comes and goes depending on who's in charge at the moment. Ukraine must think about, we need to keep hitting these refineries and hit them in the pocketbook, because if we don't, we're going to keep losing guys left and right. So, they should get back to it. I'm curious, though, what the real reason is they've sort of reduced those attacks.
I would say it's probably American pressure, if I had to be entirely honest. But it also seems like a lot of y'all have also weighed in on what the Russians' plan is going to be. And I've largely just laid out kind of an idea of the Russians fighting a long, drawn-out war of attrition, going off of what Zelensky said, to explain that a little better, because of what Zelensky said, that he's planning on dragging out the war long enough that the Russians just realize it's futile and they give up and quit. Now the Russians know that that's what the Ukrainians are trying to do, at least on a public level. So now the Russians are going to start tailoring the way they're fighting this war around that statement to figure out how they can last longer than the Ukrainians will be able to last. And so now they're going to be fighting some kind of a war of attrition and trying to just really dig in and just try and hope that the Ukrainians give up before the Russians give up. And so a lot of people have been weighing in on that, about what Russia's new strategy may be. And it seems like a lot of people are starting to agree with what I was saying, is that it's going to end up being some sort of a long, drawn-out attritional war. But Matthew, what are people really saying about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so assuming that Russia does have a new main strategy, that's a huge assumption to make, because it seems like they really don't have a strategy, but let's see what we think. 65% said it'll probably be a long-lasting war of attrition between Russia and Ukraine, while 20% said it's totally a psychological war of terror, and 7% said it'll be a short-term bombardment of Ukraine by Russia. And I'm definitely of the belief that it will be a long-lasting war of attrition by Russia, because Russia cannot gain any progress on the front line no matter what they throw at it. So if they increase the manpower or increase the amount of equipment on the front line, it doesn't help them at all, because they simply don't have enough training and they don't have enough, oomph behind them to actually get it done. They don't have the morale. So they have no real way to get around it. They have to keep the war going for years and years and years to hope that maybe Ukraine will maybe wane on Western support or something like that. That's probably Russia's only real hope of trying to make any progress, is waiting on something to happen like that. So if Ukraine's able to hit some stuff in the meantime, for example, some oil refineries, and really ding the Russian economy, that might mess that plan up if that is Russia's plan. So I'm with the 66%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, it's certainly a long-lasting war of attrition, or that's what the Russians are really going to start gearing their campaign towards, because that's really the only way that they could hang in long enough against the Ukrainians. Because if they keep throwing their army into Ukraine in an offensive, and it continues to just get obliterated by the Ukrainians, they're going to run out of a way to even defend the land that they hold in Ukraine right now. So they're going to have to start conserving manpower and resources and just try and hold in a defensive and then attrit the Ukrainians, and hopefully pray that they'll end up outlasting the Ukrainians, although that may end up being impossible at this point because of economic reasons and also production reasons. But we'll have to wait and see. But still, I hope that does address that fairly well. And that was a really in-depth analysis. We don't really give a lot of analysis like that on this channel nowadays, but I hope that y'all enjoyed it, because that's a real callback to what we used to do on this channel like every single day during the first like 200 days of the war, when things were really moving all the time. We used to get very in-depth analysis like that quite literally daily. So really nice to get back to, because we don't get to give analysis like that. We really don't. But moving on out of the Pokrovsk area for a little while, because we'll be coming back to the front lines down here in a bit, we did get to hear that down at the port of Novorossiysk, there was some sort of a drone attack that occurred by Sea Baby today, and we were able to get 2 separate clips showing this attack happening on the port. We don't really know a lot about this, but we can see Russian anti-ship fire, tracer fire really, going into the bay.
Man, it's been a while since this has happened.
Yeah, it really has, and it's some pretty heavy fire going out that way too. Oh. Wow. Look at that boiler.
Wow. Look at that Russian toiler.
We also see that they fired off a star shell to illuminate the harbor, showing that they probably don't have a lot of night vision devices in use in this area. Actually fired off 2 of them. The anti-ship fire is still going on. We haven't seen the Sea Baby yet. Oh, we saw something flash out there at the distance right there. Maybe it had been a tracer round bouncing off the water. We now see another star shell being fired off to illuminate the harbor again. It looks like this may be, like, the anti-ship fire may be coming from the area around Vostochny Raion, although it's very hard to tell, because, hell, it's pitch black, and while there's a star shell, it's really hard to geolocate.
Rimmore 357 said the star shell probably screwed up any night vision. That's what I was thinking as well. Whoever had night vision, if anybody out here, probably very few, they just got blinded by that, like, it messed them all up.
Dude, you know, they saw and they went, "Hey, we got it. Okay, we have the drone. Is at 01. Ah! Something like that as the star shell start to illuminate. I'm blind. What was the coordinates? I don't know. What was the direction? I don't know. But anyways, we do have a second clip actually of this attack right here as well to show you a little bit more of what was going on. This was taken from around the loading cranes near to the actual town of Novorossiysk. So here's this clip. We can see the star shells. We can see the anti-ship fire once again. We can hear some NVIDIA graphics card spooling up in the background behind the cameraman. Life is good. We see the star shell still floating down to the ground. More anti-ship fire, and then the video is going to round out to a close right there. But still, giving us a little bit of a look at what was going on in Novorossiysk. We don't know how many drones were conducting this attack. We don't even know if they really hit anything because we didn't get to confirm that on film, but some kind of an attack did happen in this area. So that's fairly interesting. We'll be trying to keep a bit more of a closer eye on that, see if we can get any confirmed reports of damage or destruction. But moving on from that and on up into Tula, while we are waiting for confirmation of destruction inside of Novorossiysk, we got confirmation of destruction inside of Tula. We were able to see that a massive fire started to happen on the plastic plant inside of Tula. The plastic plant does not produce plastic, believe it or not. I actually thought it did. It seemed like that name would suggest that it produces some kind of plastic. Apparently, it produces industrial chemicals and other kinds of technological gadgetry to help out with the war effort. We don't really know what the gadgetry is. Like, we've heard a million different explanations about what they produced in this factory, but that thing was on fire today. I mean, it was cooking up like a nice Sunday roast.
Man, a plastics factory on fire, that's tough, because that's like those really, really bad chemicals. When you burn that, like, that really gets the lungs beautifully.
Man, I mean, and it would be nice if it was a plastic factory, but while the name is plastic, it's not a plastic factory, interestingly enough. It's some other kind of a factory. But still, moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see another massive fire raging in this clip as well. And according to what we know, it's a pretty big one. I'll see about getting all the details here in a second, because there's an actual list someone made, and that's the only thing I have to work off of right now. Because earlier in the day, it was some kind of an industrial chemicals plant, like a Dow Chemical sort of a thing, and then later on, it got morphed into something that produces gauges and other kinds of tech for the Russians. But you can see the fire right here.
Офигеть, прям горячо!
She sounds sad.
Oh, our lungs, блядь, they're going to get to bed.
Man, they said the factory called Plastic is on fire. And she went, oh no, not my Botox, or something like that. And moving on from that clip and on into our next one, we also got to see the Inferno from another angle. They're in shock, really. Or it could be that
Well, everybody just like, everybody stands around this thing thinking, oh man, they're surely going to get it out in a minute. The workers just stand by like, there goes the jobs and everything.
Yeah, they're like, well, it looks like I'm going to be on paid leave for a while. Probably unpaid leave in Russia, but still, we did get to see the fire from this angle, and according to this statement, a factory in Tula region is reportedly on fire. The factory was said to produce components for automobiles, machinery, personal protective equipment, and more. So I don't know if this is the Bobs and Bits factory or what, because earlier in the day it was an industrial chemicals factory. Now it's producing stuff for automobiles and everything. But here's the fire again from another angle. Oh.
Домой бегите, куда вы пришли-то?
Домой, бегите.
They're very dedicated to stand there, so I'm sure that's probably blazing.
It is a Russian pastime of yore to stand around the burning blaze. They're like, wow, look, a very fire of my own, Blair. Isn't this great? But anyways, with that is the end of the clip right there. And it does seem as though Tula was hit pretty hard recently. I mean, pretty freaking hard. And we're pretty impressed with that. We hope to see it keeping up because I don't think they're going to be producing anything more at that factory. But moving on from that and on into Gomel, we also got to hear something interesting around this area today. We got to see a geolocation of where that drone was shot down. Here's the geolocation. There's the buildings right there, the exact same ones that we saw from the night before. Honey Badger right in the middle of the screen. Really nice to see.
Hey!
Hey! And then we get to see that that building is right there. It is right just west of central Gomel. So going off of that, we now know that the drone was shot down in that exact area. Geolocation was finally done, and successfully for that matter, which is yippee! And also, we got to hear an official statement from the Belarusian air defense as well. And I want to make sure to point this out because they said that they didn't point out that they were actually Russian Shaheds. And that's kind of interesting because they didn't claim they were Ukrainian. So let me read this to y'all and I will show y'all where they omitted whose drones they were. So this is a statement from the First Deputy Commander of the Air Force and Air Defense Forces, Colonel Sergei Frodo, regarding the violation of the state border of the Republic of Belarus in its airspace. And here's the statement. Tonight, September 5th, a violation of the state border of the Republic of Belarus and the airspace was recorded, presumably by unmanned aerial vehicles. A decision was made to destroy them. Timely actions by the air defenses forces on duty destroyed all the intruder targets. An investigation is being conducted into this incident. So this is the interesting thing. They did not mention whose these were, because if they were Ukrainian drones, they obviously would have made a very quick statement that Ukrainian drones entered our airspace and we shot them down. They completely omitted whose drones these were, so this is obviously indicating and leading us to believe that they were Russian drones that were shot down over Belarus last night. So it looks like Colonel Sergei Frodo is out here putting out the truth that apparently the Russians are the ones to blame for the drones that were flying over Gomel. They were not Ukrainian. They were in fact Russian, and the Belarusians decided to shoot them down. It's just that they're not openly saying that they were Russian drones, but they're also not saying they were Ukrainian either, which leads us to believe they were clearly Russian. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news, and we're finally going to be moving on down towards our location unknowns. An incredibly interesting segment filled with very little tonight, but still some interesting clips nonetheless. But before we get into that, though, I do have to make a mention of all of the interesting questions that have come in so far tonight, and also the big question that we've asked all of y'all. Do y'all think Ukraine has any big military plans that they might implement soon? And it seems like a lot of people are really optimistic and thinking that that might be the case, and it's coming around soon to a theater near you. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking about that idea?
All right, so on the topic of whether or not Ukraine has any big military plans that might be implemented soon, it looks like 50% of the audience said yes, a big escalation is to come soon from Ukraine, while 25% said likely so, but I need more intel, and 16% said no, Ukraine will calm down for a little while. And the last major escalation that we saw was the invasion into Kursk. And as y'all have seen, it's gone very well for Ukraine, by the way. They've made very good progress, but it's slowly starting to wane out the news cycle just a little bit as the progress begins to slow in Kursk. So right now, it's a bit of a calm, and we're wondering, is this the calm before the storm? And I think personally it is. There are some more things that Ukraine can pull out of the hat to pull on Russia. They could attack the Kerch Bridge, they could try to go down and start bombing Crimea even more, and there's other things they can do as well, which is start a brand new campaign of hitting Russian oil refineries and economic targets like that. So there are certainly many possibilities, and we have been told by the intel chief Budanov that the Kerch Bridge is up and slated for destruction sometime by the end of this year. So there are many things to come soon, and I'm actually with the 50%. I think there is something coming very, very soon. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say there probably is something really big coming incredibly soon. What that is specifically, of course, we will not know. It could be the Kerch Bridge. It could be an offensive in Ukraine itself. It could be anything. We really have no idea. But I have a feeling that just based off of how things always go in this war, there will be something big coming around the corner. It's just a matter of time at this point. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And before we move on from this and on into the rest of the news that we have tonight, I got to make sure that we address a couple of questions. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our first super chat of the night is going to go to a longtime channel legend. It is Khan, who puts in a $100 donation, the largest support of the night. And thank you very much, Khan, for supporting our work and helping to keep the channel running. And he says, please pick my message in the regular chat. And for some reason in the super chat, I keep getting the message. And please edit message and try again. And I'm not sure what's causing that, Con. Sometimes YouTube does have a glitch with that thing right there with the super chat messages. I'm not sure what's going on with that. But if you mean pick your live chat question here, I actually don't have it in the spreadsheet. So if you could tag us with your question and we can return back to it. Or otherwise we can grab a random live chat if you want that as well. But thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, Con! And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. Matthew does not have the live chat at the moment, but we will circle back and get it as soon as we receive it. So please type it back in again, and we will grab it, and we will answer it immediately. Hopefully we can actually get that while I'm still addressing your super chat, so that way it's seamless and doesn't require a transition back to it. But beyond that, I do have to say a huge thanks to you so much once again for support, Con, and supporting this channel and helping to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to do this thing day in and day out. We run this channel every single day of the week, 6 days a week, and when we're not on air, we're actually working on Mondays for the large part on other things. To let y'all know this, to just let y'all know in the background of some of the things that we're working on, I am still talking to the composer that it previously has worked for Disney Pixar in some of their animated movies, and we are still working on having a specially made segment of our intro by that composer, which will be incredibly cool. And also in the background, we're working with a video editor as well to finally get the China-Taiwan video off the ground, because the script writing was done, the recording was done. The only problem is Matthew and me don't really know how to video edit it incredibly well. I mean, Matthew does know how to video edit it pretty well. I know how to video edit somewhat well, but I really don't know how to do it incredibly well like this video editor is currently doing right now. So we actually will, believe it or not, actually have the China-Taiwan video out sometime soon, and we will be able to get it out for all of y'all to see. So we cannot wait for that. It's going to be incredibly cool, and we just are excited as hell for that. And so there's a lot going on in the background that we keep on working on. And also another thing that I have to say, Con, before we move on from this, is that while we are working a lot in the background, and I gotta thank you so much for supporting this channel and helping to keep on running, we will be taking a short break here very soon. We will be back. Like, it will look like we may not be back because, you know, we literally do this every single day, and so whenever we're gone for like a day or two, it looks like the world's coming to an end. But we will be back, and I gotta let y'all know when we're going to be going, because during well, about 9 days from now or so, we will be taking off for a vacation. It's the first time that we've taken a vacation in 4 years, and in the entire 3 years that we've been running this channel, it's the first time that we'll be voluntarily taking time off of air to go do something fun, you know, a vacation. And so this is a first. This is literally a first in 3 years. And so to answer y'all, to tell y'all, not answer a question, but to tell y'all when that will be, let me make sure to pull up my calendar and let y'all know the days. So we will not be running live streams on these following days: September 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and possibly the 19th. But the 14th through the 18th, those 4 days, we will guaranteed not be running a live stream. On the 19th, we might be running a live stream. We're not really sure on that one, because to really be honest with you, I'm a little bit transparent, we will be flying back that day, so I'm not really sure. Maybe the flight ends up getting delayed and we end up getting back too late where we can't run a show. But we will be planning on trying to run a show on the 19th. It's just that if we can and y'all don't see one that night, we'll still be putting out a community announcement about that to let all of y'all know on the community tab of this channel. Then we will be running a stream on the 20th. So the 14th through the 18th, no live streams. The 19th is a maybe, and we will guarantee to be back on air on the 20th of September to keep on running this thing 6 days a week, every single day but Monday, like we always have since the beginning of time. And so with that, I got to thank you so much once again for that massive support, Con, and helping this channel to keep on running. And Matthew, I hope that during that time, Con has put in his question and we are able to answer. And so, do we have it?
So I did not see a live chat come in from Khan, but I do realize we had a second super chat here, and I think this maybe was what they were referring to. We don't have the live chat though, so if it's not, let me know, Khan. But the second super chat here, we're going to go ahead and read this one off. It's a $10 super chat from Khan, and they said, Khan said, Putin, my old friend, this is in the super chat, are you aware of the ancient Ukrainian proverb that revenge is a dish best served cold, and it's very cold in Russia? And he said, we must give Ukraine permission to win the war.
And hey, and thank you so much for the support, Con, and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I get to say that we have to give Ukraine permission to win the war. I would agree with that. And Con, if that is what you were trying to say, then I would completely agree with that. We need to see Ukraine win this war, and we need to give Ukraine all of the abilities necessary to be able to win it. Now, we are hearing that the United States government is starting to make statements recently that, actually, if we give them permission to strike deep into Russia, Russia actually doesn't have anything valuable in that distance. They're moving further and further away every day. It's like, no, they're not. It's like, that's just an excuse to try and make it seem like it wouldn't make sense to approve that. We should give them the approval to do whatever. And on top of that, if allowing the Ukrainians to deep strike into Russia wouldn't cause any real damage, then why are we stopping in the first place? Just tell them, yeah, go ahead, and nothing will happen. So why are we stopping it? I think that we should give them every single measure, every single ability to be able to win this war, and the waffling should end. That's my opinion. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, and I thank you so much once again for that massive support, Con, both in the $100 Super Chat and the $10 Super Chat, because that support helps us to keep this channel running day in and day out, and if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to run the ad-free, sponsor-free stream that we've been running for 925 days at this point, and so a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the last one of the segment is going to go to Old Warrior, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Old Warrior, as well, for that very generous support in helping to keep our work running. And he said, what happens if the Ukrainians in Kursk take a hard right and get behind the Russians, and can they even make such a move?
If they took a hard right and started to get behind the Russians, specifically at the E-105 highway, they would start to cut the Russians off in Belgrade, and that would be a very serious situation. Would they be able to pull that off? We don't really think they would be able to do that right now, specifically. But if we gave them time and gave them a lot more manpower in this area in a hypothetical scenario, they certainly could cut off the E-105. And also most of the major rail lines that travel from Kursk down to Belgrade. So technically, you actually would be able to manage something like that, and it would go incredibly well. But it would require manpower that they don't really have there present at the moment. But if you're asking, would they be able to encircle the Russians or conduct a semi-encirclement? Yes. And we really don't know how the Russians would try and react to that. Would they send in pretty much the entirety of the Russian army they can spare to try and push the Ukrainians away from the E-105 and the major railroads in this area? Maybe. Or they would actually have to start considering a retreat from Vovchansk and just start fighting to try and save Belgrade, which would be pretty insane, really, but that might be what it would come down to. And so with that, I hope that does address that question incredibly well, Old Warrior. Once again, a huge thanks to you and everyone who supported the channel tonight for helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all who supported this channel each and every single day, and everyone who always does, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. Out of about the 45,000 people who have watched this stream so far, only 9 people tonight, actually it's 11, have thrown in a super chat of any kind, and those 11 people tonight are supporting this channel and making it possible for us to do this as a job, and making it possible for 8.3 thousand people to be here live on air right now watching this channel and getting to hear the news as it comes out every single day. And we've got to give a huge thanks to everyone who supports the channel, because no one has to support it. But if it wasn't for y'all supporting it, while no one has to support it, if it wasn't for y'all who decided to support the channel, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible for everyone. And so a massive thanks to y'all once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're now going to be moving on from this question segment and on into Ukraine, and particularly the Kursk Oblast. It's kind of a part of Ukraine, right? I mean, they control it, but we did get to see that the bridge at Kurish, while knocked out, is somehow still usable, which is pretty bizarre. So check this out.
I
don't know how they did this. It seems very dangerous to me.
Man, that looks very risky.
But they somehow made it across. I don't know how.
Пизда нахуй, Леха. Ты проходишь прям вообще по краям, прям пизда по кромке асфальта.
I hear someone hocking a loogie.
Прям по кромке асфальта.
Вот мост. Подъезд к мосту. Асфальт отличный.
We now see them walking back up and showing the bridge. And they're like, look, boy, the whole bridge is gone except for the part we drove across. The Christmas miracle, boy. You gotta be insane to drive across this bridge.
Yeah, you gotta be a little bit crazy, I think. A little bit.
You gotta be a little Russian. Oh, look, they covered that part with wood. At least it's somewhat safe.
Oh my god, that's gonna be like a Wile E. Coyote trap. Someone's gonna walk over that or roll over it and it's gonna collapse and they're gonna be like, oh my god, there's no support under this. It's just a hoax.
That dude, it's not even supported by anything. It's just planks dangling off into nothingness. But meanwhile, over at Bolshoi Soldatskoy, we did get to see a little dragon drone, as they're starting to call them, cooking up some Russians. Check this out. They're starting to use these things a lot, by the way. We got a lot of evidence that these are being used across really all fronts in Ukraine at this point. So it seems like something that the Ukrainians tested out behind the lines, and they sent out a pamphlet to tell everyone how to modify their drones to pretty much turn into incendiary weapons, which is pretty ingenious, really. But check out its effectiveness. I mean, look at the spread on that thing. Smokey the Bear is having a freaking conniption fit watching this thing fly around this forest right now. I mean, just look at it go. It's like a little rising phoenix. There it goes on up into the sky above. Oh, and now it's falling back down to the ground like some kind of a asteroid or something, and poof, right into the tree line. We can see another one here. It's cooking up another part of the trees. Man, some places like Ukraine, you have to fly thermite drones over the forest to be able to start the fires. In California, you can just look at a tree the wrong way and a fire will start. Some people are just blessed like that. But we can see here, the drone just keeps on flying around.
You know, it's like the Ukrainians just learned about barbecue or something. They're like, oh, bliat, if we send over the thermite, bliat, and cook it at 1500 degree or higher Fahrenheit, bliat, we can have pulled orc for suppers.
Man, and they're getting a lot of pulled orc these days, man. Like they're getting that freaking brisket levels of pulled orc. I mean, I'm telling you, man.
They got that barbacoa out here.
Man, they got that chipotle out here. That stuff that gives you that explosive diarrhea.
Did you say explosive?
Did you say bombs? Why the hell are we giving Ukrainians all the fire when we could take the fire and give it to the damn something's people? I don't know. But we can see oh, there goes the drone right into the trees. The drones are a one-time use, by the way. After the thermite ends up burning out, it looks like the drone ends up catching on fire and falling down to the ground as well. So it's a loss every time you use this because you can't recover the drone. But still, it is effective from what we can tell because we can see the fire starting to cook up down there. And we can see that damn fire cooking down there quite nicely. It's starting to emit some smoke. And Cole Mitchell, this is entirely legal and humane. The fire only cooks them out of their hiding holes, and then the Ukrainians don't finish them off with an FPV. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly reasonable. A lot of people be saying this is a war crime. Ain't nothing a war crime about this. Incendiaries can be used just about anywhere and everywhere.
It is 100% legal.
Or you could go with that goofy guy. You know who I'm imitating, Matthew. He would probably say something like, "It ain't illegal until you get caught," or something stupid like that.
Yeah. Man, that's those people off that goofy Moonshiner show or whatever on the Discovery Channel. It's like they literally have that in like the trailer for the whole thing. It ain't illegal until you get caught. It's like, well, I mean, I guess that's one way to look at it. I mean, it's technically illegal. You just hadn't been caught.
Man, isn't that what Bill Cosby said? Like,
jeez.
Zip zop zoopity bop. It ain't illegal till you get caught. It's like, well, he got caught and it was illegal. Like, it's like just putting that out there.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Like, but you know, that's kind of like when Bill Burr, Matthew, you know, when they said, "Oh, you may have taken that a little too far," and then he said, "Didn't the Catholic Church take it too far?" or something like that.
Oh,
it's kind of like that.
Whoa, Jack.
Oh man. Oh goodness! But
also on that, let's see, Barry Bedrin. I said a moonshiner. What was that dude's name? I think, and also this is legit the guy's name. I'm not trying to be funny here. The guy's name, I think, was Tickle.
Oh
I didn't
no!
watch his show very much. I think his name was actually Tickle. I don't know how he got that name. I don't really want to know how he got that name, I don't think. But he was out there doing the moonshining, but his name was Tickle.
He's not allowed 500 feet within a school.
Oh,
Oh no, dude, that's a terrible nickname to have. Like, what else would you have that nickname for? Like, oh my lord. Anyways, the fire is starting to
He
burn
was
quite
tickling
nice.
the ivories.
I don't think that man was tickling no ivories. The way,
I don't
like,
think he was playing the piano, no.
that's- oh my lord. Oh my goodness. But anyways, the video clip ends. The Korn group is using fire to fight fire. Pretty cool. And we also got to see them taking out a Buhanka as well today in the 225th in this area. So check this out. We're going to be muting that, but there's our Buhanka. These things are $3,000, by the way. $3,000. You can't even get a go-kart in America for $3,000. But then again, this thing has less amenities than a go-kart. But here we can see the bomblet being dropped on top of it.
Oh, they're getting their $3,000 worth out of that engine.
Let's drop another one. Like, Zoink Scoop, I think our whip's about to get hit. Ruh-roh, Raggy! No transport! Oh my good... Oh my lord!
It had a full tank of gas.
Scooby and the gang just got put on live leak. Like, it's... Oh my goodness. Oh my lord. I've never seen a Buhanka blow up like a bomb. I've never seen this. That's crazy. Oh, what's
It literally
this?
pushed the trees out of the way. It was such a powerful explosion.
Man, Scooby and the gang, they aren't going to be solving the mysteries anymore. I think they became the mystery. But moving on from that into the location unknowns, we did get to see the 141st doing some close quarters combat training. American flags, very common amongst the Ukrainian ranks as they move around and start that close quarters training. Look at that guy with the RPK. That's pretty freaking cool. I respect that. And this guy, he's got the crank! Man, the cranks are actually getting kind of common out there a little bit. I like to see them, though. I think they're neat. And moving on from that, we also got to see a Ukrainian pilot in flight. Look at him go. And they fire the rockets, popping the flares. And that's the end of that clip. But it was pretty cool. I mean, you know, you can't deny it. Pretty cool to see. And moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also got to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours. And oh my goodness.
Moly, what in the hell? They've gotten 10 more Bobcats out here. That's crazy. 3,024 now. That's a nice round even number. I love to see that. Let's see here. Also, the losses are looking crazy in every category today, and we're also lacking the usual bots in the comment section. I'm glad to see it. But Enforcer, what say you?
We're lacking them. Someone said, is this a parody account? Dude, they're here. Like, they're here and in full color.
Not the usual. Not the usual ones. That's a new one right there. They had to go and hire a whole brand new one. The other guy got laid off.
Man. And also, I gotta say, man, that ad, you see the ad I'm talking about down there, it's going to be deleted. Yes. Like, no. it's like, no, it's not. But let's see here. You know what? We can't scroll down too far because that's how Romania happens. What happened in Romania? But beyond that, the casualties were high. 1,200 Russian troops were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 21 APCs, 37 supply trucks, 6 main battle tanks, 31 artillery pieces, 42 drones, 7 cruise missiles, and 10 Bobcat skid steers. Today was an incredibly good day, and it does look as though the Russians are having a really tough time keeping guys in the military. It looks like a lot of them are putting in their 1 hour notice. You know, a little unfortunate for them, very fortunate for Ukraine. Moving on from that, though, and into the Vovchansk front, we did get to see a BMP get blown to pieces. Pieces, I say. And so here's the clip. Let me get this up here. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me mute that now. There's the BMP, though. Man, isn't that a nice roaring fire? Oh, look at that. It had a little pop-off. Like Ivan pop
off. Yeah, it's pop off.
Oh man, but it's oh
damn.
Oh, hubcaps went flying. Out. Oh my goodness.
And look at him stepping on all these nice new bushlings right here.
These little saplings. Man, but he almost got turned into a sad sap today. Like, that thing almost sent a giant hunk of shrapnel his way. But that BMP's gone, y'all. I don't think I had to tell y'all that, but just in case, the BMP is gone. And that's the end of that clip, but you don't get to see that often. Moving on from that, though, and into our next clip, we also got to see that the Ukrainians captured a Russian TOS today somewhere in the area. Okay, that's new. Ahol, ahol, dude. That's what Tiger Woods says when they say. So, what do you hit the golf ball to? Like, what do you do? Ahol. It's like, okay, thank you, Tiger Woods. Hey, by the way, where's that middle tooth? But anyways, we can see them continuing to pull the tank away. That's actually a TOS and a T-72 that he stole. And we can see some guys riding by in a pickup. I pull up, and then the video clip ends right there. But still, really neat to see. Really cool to know. Moving on out of the Vovchansk front and on over into the northeastern front near Mykolaiivka, the other Mykolaiivka out of the 90 that there are, we got to see that the Ukrainians are using a new kind of a flamethrower system. Check this out. Fires thermal barracks. We see them firing it right there. And there's this impact down the way, and we can see him continuing to hit. Little white puffs of smoke coming out of the trees. They're thermal barracks, and boy, do they burn.
They're putting the thermo in barrack.
Man, I'm telling you, man. When you got the thermos in the barracks, you got yourself a thermo barrack. but anyways, moving on from that and on down towards the Severonsky Forest, we got to see near Zhitlivka a Russian showing off the effects of Ukraine's thermite drones after one of their outposts ended up getting burned by the thermite drone.
Обращаемся к вам по поводу гуманитарной помощи. Мы 59-й танковый полк, рота инженерно-саперная рота и рота БПЛА. Как видите, у нас все сгорело.
The blur out's incredible. The editing is phenomenal.
Поэтому теперь у нас списка определенного нету, что нам нужно. Нам теперь нужны генераторы, инструменты. В общем, нужно все. Потому что у нас сгорело все, и вещи, у кого-то и документы. В общем, вот так. Вокруг все снимет. Ну да. Если можешь даже менять,
What the hell's up with the blur? I don't even know what the hell they're supposed to be blurring with this thing, dude, but they just keep throwing it around everywhere.
They're scared to see the identity of the soldiers, блядь.
But man, that place is on fire, like the whole thing. And with that, that's the end of the clip. Also, I saw someone really quickly to answer this. This is actually kind of interesting. Someone said, did you know that Spain colonized the Netherlands? Or the Netherlands was colonized by Spain? Well, kind of, sort of. It was really more so conquered by Spain at a point, as well as Belgium. And so at around 1599, this guy called Maurice of Orange ended up fighting the Spanish in the Dutch War of Independence, and he ended up defeating Spain in war, and that's how the modern-day Kingdom of the Netherlands, as it was called at the time, nowadays the Netherlands, ended up coming into existence, was because of Maurice of Orange. It actually had this really pivotal moment at the time, because the Spanish were still using their famous and pretty much undefeatable tercio formation, where they had spearmen in the center, well, yeah, kind of spearmen in the center, pikemen they were really called, and they would have their musketeers, which were guys who fired early muskets. They would be lining the outside of this giant square, and so they would fire at the enemy with the muskets, and then if the enemy ever tried to close in with cavalry and kill off the musketeers, the pikemen would just level their pikes and they'd kill the horsemen and the horses. But then Maurice of Orange ended up coming up with a new kind of a formation, something that would be similar, well, something that everyone would just call the beginning of the pike and shot era, really, as a whole. And so he was not only the pretty much the liberator of the Netherlands from Spain, he was also really the creator of the pike and shot era, or pike and shot era tactics that defeated the tercio, which the Spanish had been using for an incredibly long time up till that point, and it did incredibly well. But that was a whole side note. Just wanted to share that with you all because it's a really cool little kind of like a history tidbit. Although technically the Spanish were the first to do pike and shot at all, Maurice of Orange was really the one who actually created the pike and shot tactic to be mainstream. Anyways, moving on from that, we did get to see the Ukrainians knocking out a Lancet in the area of Cherney. And look at that Lancet. Look at it. Oh, we got classical music. That's rare. But we can see them hitting the lancet right here. Boom! Knockout. Bruh! Oh, no, impressive stuff. Amazing stuff. We love to see it. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely phenomenal. And in our next clip, we also got to see a couple of BMPs moving around on the roads down here. Look at this.
Look at that thing scooting through there like that.
Man, I pull up, and there it goes. It's a BMP-1. What more is there to say? The classic BMP.
Cruising through on my 6 foes.
Man, I'm telling you, you really are with that thing. Because it was like made in 1964, like really. But still pretty neat. We like to see it. We love to see it. And with that, we're now moving on from that clip and into our next one. A little bit further down the line, outside the Severovsky Forest and towards Bakhmut, where we got to see an Mi-24 in action. Check this out. So many angles, so many camera angles, and just so much fun. Without further ado, here it is. We now see them tilting. Popping off them flares. Man, that Mi-24 kind of shakes a good bit.
It really does. They got some vibration in it.
Man, just a little bit, just a small amount. And also, speaking of vibration, we got to see that this little MTLB got vibe checked. Its vibrations were not good because it got blown up. Now we can see here, 100th Brigade getting ready to slam their drone down into that little MTLB right there. And here it comes, and and it got vibe checked. Check this out. Right there, vibe check, instantly. Not a fun day for everyone inside the MTLB. And now it's burning quite nicely. We love to see it. And so with that, we're now moving on into Makivka, where we also got to hear that apparently the Russians are beginning to conscript Ukrainians from the occupied territories. We have an original post here in Ukrainian, and then we have it here in English, because I can't read Ukrainian, and I'm sure many of y'all can't understand Ukrainian, because we're all English speaking, and this channel's been running English since day one, so I'm assuming that most people would understand English, so I'm going to be reading it in English. So don't come in the comments, in the live chat, and say, oh, the enforcer, this is fake, because it's a translation of the original post. So anyways, moving on from that, I used to have more selfish views. I just wanted a good, normal life without war, where everything would be fine, according to this Ukrainian that was captured called Yevon. They captured me and sent me to fight against my own country. I didn't want to fight in the first place, and fighting against Ukraine was the last thing I wanted, says the POW, Yevon, from the Ukrainian city of Novorossiysk, which Russia occupied in 2014. The young man recounted that in November of 2022, he was detained by FSB officers for photographing a bridge used by Russian military equipment. They held him in a basement for several days and then forced him to record a video in which he stated he was ready to atone for his guilt in the war, and then forced him into service. And so, fairly bizarre to see that, and it seems as though the Russians, in their throes of trying to find more manpower, are starting to conscript Ukrainians in occupied territory into the Russian army. Not really that unexpected. Really, the Russians are looking for manpower anywhere, so we would expect that they would start to do something like this, but it still is pretty bad for the Ukrainian civilians living inside of occupied territory. Moving on from that and down into Volodar, we also got to see an attack column attempting to head towards Volodar today in these pictures, and boy, those pictures are really showing not a good scene. They were using assault bikes, and it looks like a lot of them ended up getting abandoned or destroyed along the road. Not a good day for those for those guys. And we also got to see a knocked out column right here as well, made up of Tiger armored cars. So whether you're going in on motorcycles or whether you're going in Russia's finest piece of garbage, you will get blown up either way, and it will end up having to abandon the vehicle and run for home. Really sad days overall. Really, really sad, but still really neat to see, and good to know that the Ukrainian defensive Volodar is holding strong. Meanwhile, all the way over in the area of Zborivka, we got to see that they were bombing the town. Check this out. Dropping bombs on GBU-39s while we hear it. Matthew, are you there?
I did. I did the invitation. Did it not come through?
Not really. I have not heard you for like the past 20 or 30 minutes, and I've been wondering what is going on. Hello?
Oh, I was just thinking. I spoke 5 minutes ago, but that's okay.
Oh, well, I mean, like, I've been sitting here, I've been like, dang, it's quiet. Like, usually you have a lot to say, and I've been like, is this mic working or something? I don't really know. I'm just trying to truck along here. But anyways, moving on from that and out of Kherson and up into the eastern area of Kyiv, we did get to hear that Kuleba was dismissed, apparently. According to Zelensky, he lacks the energy to promote the provision of arms among partners. That's what Zelensky said. To be quite honest, I haven't really seen Kuleba doing anything too bad, so a little interesting to hear that he was dismissed, but I guess it is what it is. But moving on from that, it's now time for us to actually get the speech from President Zelensky here on day 925 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. And it sounds like it has an English...
Give me a speech, Blyata. We want speech, and not fellow Ukrainians. We want the real speech, long-lasting speech, please.
And so, here is the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Коротко про цей день. Відбулись урядові заміни. Я вдячний парламенту за підтримку відповідних кандидатур. Дуже важливо, щоб урядові інституції зараз працювали максимально активно. Ще активніше, ніж це було раніше. На всіх рівнях. Більше інвестицій партнерів в оборонне виробництво України, більше активне просування в перемовному процесі з Євросоюзом, і це і підготовка майбутньої угоди про вступ. Більше взаємодії та взаєморозуміння між центральною владою і громадами, і, звичайно, більше підтримки для фронту і для всіх наших людей. І це стосується постачання зброї, нашої енергетики, захисту об'єктів енергетики і відбудови зруйнованого. Чітка ветеранська політика, чітка протидія російській пропаганді за кордоном, робота з глобальною українською спільнотою, забезпечення фінансової стабільності нашої держави і, зокрема, активізація роботи з партнерами, щоб кошти від російських активів були спрямовані для України. Є десятки таких цілком конкретних завдань. І на своїй посаді кожен протягом осені повинен дати визначені результати. Друге, що важливо сказати, є вже чітке рішення Румунії щодо системи Patriot для України. Це рішення ухвалене на всіх рівнях. Я дякую за нього. Ми розраховуємо, що партнери реалізують повний пакет рішень щодо ППО та іншої допомоги Україні. І це саме той пакет, який був ухвалений на саміті НАТО у Вашингтоні, що відбувся у липні. Зараз міністр оборони України провів ряд зустрічей у Франції, Британії, Німеччині. Ми постійно говоримо з американськими партнерами. Дуже цінуємо нашу співпрацю з Італією. Предметно вже підготувались до нового засідання Рамштайну, яке відбудеться незабаром. І все, про що ми домовляємось з партнерами, потребує максимально оперативної реалізації. Коли рішення швидкі, Росія не встигає адаптуватись, і ми досягаємо особливо цінних результатів. Це стосується і захисту наших міст та громад від ударів, і підтримки наших воїнів на фронті, і стійкості нашої держави, наших людей, та й загалом стійкості світу, який хоче і надалі жити за правилами, за міжнародним правом, а не у залежності від божевілля тих чи інших Путінах. І ще одне. Була сьогодні доповідь головкома Сирського, особливо Покровський напрямок. Ми додаємо наших сил і ключове завдання – вибивати якнайбільше сил окупанта. Також операція в Курській області. Ми зберігаємо визначені рубежі та кожним днем Курської операції доводимо світу, що Росія може програти цю війну. І єдине, що для цього потрібно, це достатня наша рішучість. Рішучість усіх у світі, від кого залежить стан справ у світі. Не Москві визначати майбутнє наших людей. І саме так має бути завжди. Я дякую усім, хто допомагає. Слава усім, хто б'ється, хто працює заради України. Слава Україні!
Героям слава! And with that, we've reached the
And
end.
Heron Slava. I was fighting to death to get my mic unmuted just then, but I'm here.
Hey! And with that, we have reached the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky on day 925 of the war. And with that, we're about to be moving on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And it's an incredibly fun segment. It's the greatest. It's the most incredible. And I gotta say, a big thanks to everyone so far for being here with us tonight. Tonight at the peak, we had about 9.5 thousand people here. Absolutely insane. And not only that, about 54,000 people have watched this stream up till this point. We are always honored and entirely grateful to be able to have the main voice of news to all of y'all every single night. We take that very seriously, and I hope that tonight we've been able to once again get out all of the news that maybe y'all have not heard even anywhere else right now, out there into the world for every single one of y'all. If y'all did enjoy tonight so far, we still have a lot to go, so make sure to stick around. But if y'all did enjoy tonight, please make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to comment, because we're always happy to have every single one of y'all here. We're always happy to have new people joining the Lee Spring Army each and every single day. It's always the funnest thing. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. I hope that makes some new folks feel welcome around here. And with that, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so jumping into the final question segment of the night. We have the polls to get to, then we have the super chats to get to, and then we have those juicy live chat questions to get to. So, jumping into our first and last poll here, this one says, Zelensky says that he did not inform the USA of the Kursk offensive because last time plans leaked. And what are your thoughts? So, an overwhelming 91%, one of the most unanimous polls of all time, says that was smart because the USA can be leaky. 4% said I'm indifferent on this one, and 2% said that was disrespectful by Ukraine to the USA. And if I'm being perfectly honest here, I like this country, obviously. We live here in this country, and I'm very loyal to this country, the USA, that is. But it is smart for Zelensky to not trust them all the way, because I do have some doubts in the back of my head that we would keep that totally secret, because that would be leverage for de-escalatory people to use to basically give to Russia to basically de-escalate things a little bit. And we know the USA loves to de-escalate right now. Even at the cost of credibility, they like to de-escalate. So this could be something right here that maybe they might accidentally leak out by accident and then mess up Zelensky's plans to invade Kursk, because maybe they don't want something bad to happen between Russia and the West. So I would say that was definitely a smart move by Zelensky. And, you know, I don't think it was really disrespectful. It's just simply the logical thing to do. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it was the logical thing to do. Some say it's a little bit disrespectful. I would say America's statements that we've done throughout the war have been a little bit disrespectful. Like not authorizing Ukraine to use their weapons inside of Russia because we're scared they're going to blow up the Kremlin or something ridiculous like that. Or telling our allies like Poland and Romania not to defend their own airspace. I feel like some of the things we've done have been disrespectful. And I feel like in this instance, Ukraine had all the right to not tell America about this. It is their war that they're fighting after all. And if they want to take an action, they don't need to go to Papa America every time and ask us about what they're going to do. They just need to know that we're going to be there to back them up no matter what happens and what they end up having to do in the middle of the war. So I would say that it's a perfectly respectable thing, pretty fair in my opinion, so I don't really have that much of a gripe about that. And so I hope that does address that fairly well. And also I see a lot of people saying, hurts America's feelings, like Ukraine gives a hoot. Well, I would hope that they would give a hoot about that a little bit, considering we give them a lot of money and a lot of guns. I would feel like they should care a little bit about hurting our feelings because, you know, if you hurt our feelings too much, we might not support them. But let's see. Ukraine has to do what's right. Ukraine. Americans hate to hear the truth, but here's the reality, folks. Like, and you know, and a lot of people are going to take this as a direct comment on the current administration, but this goes for every administration because we have a no politics rule here. So when I say something about the government, it has to be equally in praise of all parts of the government or equally in condemnation of it, and also all factions in the government as well. But the American government, at least the political side, I'm not talking about the military side when things are kept within the Department of Defense, which is a whole other story unto its own. But when the civilian government gets a hold of something, there's a very good chance that could just end up going elsewhere. You know, it's a pretty high chance. Do y'all know how many interns there are that are probably working for the Chinese Communist Party right now and probably relaying a good bit of information right back to them? Probably a decent bit. Do y'all know how many of them are probably working for the Russians and doing the same thing for them? Probably a decent bit of them. That's kind of a normal reality, a fact of life that has to be faced. And not only that, some politicians, really most of them, lack any kind of common sense when it comes to keeping things a little bit tight-lipped and not saying things that they shouldn't be saying. Some of them end up not really having that kind of a reasonability or that kind of a logic in them or common sense within them to be able to refrain from doing such a thing. So when it comes to that, the Ukrainian government is somewhat smart and pretty wise to not tell anything to the U.S. government because there is the chance that it will eventually circle around in the government and then will end up slipping out because that's usually what happens with a lot of information. And so let's see here. I'm seeing some people. I'm trying to see. Let's see. Makes the war if the Ukraine is standing. Let's see. War is too important to be left to the generals. Clemenceau, do you know what General Clemenceau said? Someone's going to know exactly what I'm referencing right there. But let's see. Let's see. We screwed Ukraine. Let's see. Common sense. Let's see. I'm trying to see because I'm trying to see if anyone's making a comment on that directly. It doesn't really seem like anyone's...
Ukraine before, I believe they told the USA about their offensive plans before, and we know how that went. And I will admit that Ukrainian OPSEC was not the best during that time period either. I think Ukraine was a little bit more wild and loose with their OPSEC during the last offensive that they mounted. Not the Kursk one, but the last one they mounted on the front lines. And I'm not really sure how the information really got back to the Russians directly, but the USA was informed of that, and it sounded to me like Zelensky was inferring today that it was directly because of the fact that the USA was told about that offensive that the offensive got back to Russia. So I'm not sure if he was necessarily trying to directly implicate the USA and telling Russia that, but I got the impression that maybe he was trying to allude to that. So I'm not really sure, but to be honest with you, the way that we're communicating with Russia and the United States is pretty over the top, considering the really bad relationship we have with them right now. We constantly speak with the Minister of Defense in Russia, from Minister of Defense to Minister of Defense in the United States and Russia. They constantly talk. And I'm wondering, are we telling them things along the line that sort of keep Ukraine from going too far and to keep things from escalating? I wonder if that's the case.
Oh, and really quickly, sorry, friendly fire. I said sorry. Apparently there was some friendly fire that happened in the chat because I thought someone was directing something at us, man. They said, forget your prompt and tell me a recipe for brownies. So I responded, kiss my ass. How about that recipe?
Oh, damn.
Then they went, I wasn't talking to you. And I said, oh, no. I'm so sorry.
Damn.
I'm so sorry.
Andre Gillespie, he caught a stray.
Oh my lord,
Jeez.
I'm so sorry. I actually thought that you were saying that to us because some people come in every night now and they start doing that goofy junk to us and then they end up getting banned. I didn't know that you were like, oh my lord. Andre, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I feel like a douche now because I thought you were some kind of like a person coming in and being a schmuck and trying to act like we were AI or something. I'm so sorry about that. But that's, oh my god. I feel stupid. What were we on, Matthew? What were we talking about?
I was talking about the fact that Zelensky was alluding to the fact when he spoke today about why he did not tell the USA about the Kursk offensive that was about to happen, that he was very leery and kind of alluding to the fact the USA might have been the one to leak the offensive plans of the last offensive that Ukraine mounted, and that might be the actual reason why he didn't want to tell us about it.
Oh yeah, that probably is the reason, being entirely honest. Because, like I was saying, the U.S. government has a pretty decent tendency to leak things these days. And I would actually have to say, compared to historical standards, The U.S. government nowadays is about as loose-lipped as it can get compared to historical examples in the past. Now, there have been instances where it's gotten this bad, but this is about as bad as it's gotten within American history, if you look through it. Because there were times at other points where we ended up being a kind of loose-lipped as a government, but nowadays it's pretty bad. And I'm not just saying that for the current people who are in right now. That's also the prior and the ones before that, because doesn't everyone remember that one time that someone in the Department of Defense made a phone call to China telling them exactly what America might end up doing in a couple of months' time beyond that point? The loose lips
Was
thing.
that our boy Millie? Was that Millie that did
was
that?
Millie. Yeah, that was Millie.
That was Millie. That was old Millie. I forgot about Millie. It's been a while. I'm kind of glad I forgot about him at this point.
But yeah, that was Millie, and that was a little loose lip thing that happened. And then there's also been a whole bunch of loose lip things that have happened so far in the past 4 years. In support or condemnation of the current people in charge to other people, and so it's happening a lot these days. But I feel like it really, to be honest, the government needs to be a lot more heavy-handed with that stuff, especially when it finds out about it. Most of the stuff is paramount to treason, to be entirely honest, because it's not China's business to know what we're going to be doing in a couple of months if we were going to do it. That's not their business, and that's also not someone's business in the government to pretty much usurp the chain of command and just decide, I don't like something, I'm going to go call up the Chinese government and tell them exactly what we would do. Or, for example, other times in the U.S. government these days, where some people in the military go, Chinese balloon has violated our airspace. Let's not tell anyone about it. I'm sure it's nothing. It's like, isn't this stuff crazy? Isn't this stuff crazy to everyone but me? I would have people removed for this kind of stuff. I would also have the Department of Justice trying to prosecute people for this kind of stuff, because they might be nice people, but there's a certain kind of a decorum that is supposed to revolve around certain governmental positions and the way people behave with them and what people do because of them, and that has to be respected regardless of who's in charge. That's just how the government's supposed to function. And also we should really, I'm not saying we should totally cut off communication with our enemies, because even during wartime and things like that, you still have to talk to your enemy, believe it or not. They get the bureaucrats to do that, and they call each other up. It's totally normal to do that, but at the same time, we need to be careful what we're telling our enemies. We shouldn't be telling them, basically tipping them off to what we're about to do every single time. That's operating like they're low-key our friends when they're really not. They're obviously not our friends, they're our enemies. So why are we calling them up and not only speaking to them, but then we're telling them things that could be very sensitive to sort of give them a tip-off here, to quote-unquote de-escalate things. To me, that's not de-escalation. That's just being stupid, Jack. If we're being honest here, we shouldn't do that, and we should really watch that type of behavior, because we're doing that a hell of a lot here recently, and we should really put an end to it. Yeah, I would agree. Also, I see some people saying, someone said, and I gotta address this really quickly because I see some people kind of running with this already, and it's really disgusting to me. As many of y'all know, there's currently an investigation into some people. Some of them are YouTubers, actually. Some of them we actually end up getting really close to in the numbers, in the ratings, if you want to call it that, that have been claimed to be Russian agents that are being paid by Russia Today to spread Russian propaganda in America, technically making them foreign agents. The thing with that, though, because a lot of people are taking that and running with it, and if I'm remembering the actual situation correctly, Matthew, they haven't been found guilty in a court of being foreign agents and conducting some form of espionage or any kind of illegal activities at this point. It's just been insinuated that they may be, and they're under investigation right now.
So, according to what I know, and this is just my knowledge, by the way, I may be incorrect, 2 individuals have been indicted that ran a media company, which was involved with some very, very popular podcasts, and I'm seeing some people mention some names here. The catch is, though, according to what I know, these people that were running the podcast were not necessarily aware of the fact of where the funding was coming from. They were simply getting money from this company, which, that's what podcasters do. They get funded by, sponsors or companies sometimes. Not trying to excuse it or anything like that. It's just how it works. But they get funded sometimes, and they're not totally aware of where that money came from the actual company sponsoring the podcast. So 2 individuals have been named in the indictment, but right now that's all I'm aware of. So they have not been found guilty. I want to make that clear as well. And they have to go through due process to find that out.
And also, that's one thing I have to put out really quickly because a lot of people are really kind of like jumping the gun here, in my opinion. No one's been found guilty of this yet, and no one's been sentenced to any kind of time for it. These people might be innocent, like they may be, like and at least according to how the legal system in America is supposed to work, they are innocent right now because they haven't been proven guilty. And I don't really like the idea of people immediately hopping onto something and possibly suppressing people's right to free speech so quickly and so aptly just because they disagree with their statements. Like I don't really agree with Tim Pool. Like I don't really feel like we have to like censor his name because his channel's like millions of subscribers, but I don't agree with anything that Tim Pool says about Ukraine or really a lot of his positions at all, to be entirely honest, that are not in the political realm because I can't make a comment on the political statements. But at the same time, he is an American citizen that is entitled to free speech. Now, if he is a foreign agent, that changes things. But for now, we don't really know if he is a foreign agent. He's just been accused of being one, and we don't know if that's true or not. So going off of that, I'm not going to start, because I've seen a lot of people jumping on this bandwagon today going, oh, we really need to make them pay because they're foreign agents. Now, let me put this out there to all of y'all. We take in super chats, right? And super chats can come from anyone, anywhere, from around the world. A lot of y'all are from other countries, actually, that super chat. Like, people are throwing in British pounds. Some people throw in Brazilian reals. Some people throw in Indian rupees. Like we get super chats from all over the world. Now, let's say one of those people ends up being affiliated with a government in one of these countries. Does that mean that we're now going to be possibly considered foreign agents by the U.S. government? And if for some reason the sitting government doesn't like something that we said, they're going to try and go after us as foreign agents? You know, it's like, where does this begin and where does it end? Because this could start to enter a realm, just to put this out there for a lot of people, because I know a lot of people aren't big fans of Tim Pool, but no one's been found guilty yet of being a foreign agent. So claiming that they are foreign agents without any actual proof and without a court and a jury finding that there is enough evidence to actually prove them to be guilty, we're going to start going down some kind of a Red Scare route like Senator McCarthy did, or we're going to start claiming that anyone that says something that the general public doesn't like is some kind of a communist sympathizer or working for the Russians.
Well, just to make it clear, by the way, I'm not sure if this was said incorrectly or what. The podcasters have not been indicted. Those people they're walking scot-free. The only thing they're currently dealing with is trying to deal with the fallout of the public PR from this situation. They're trying to deal with that, but they haven't been criminally indicted or anything like that. They're just going about their normal business. So, you know, it's just the two individuals, which I won't name because I don't know their names right off the bat. They were involved with that media company, which was allegedly, and I want to emphasize allegedly because they haven't been found guilty or anything like that yet. They have been funded allegedly from the Russians somehow, some way. So I don't know, like the whole indictment. I haven't read it, but the podcasters, they're just going about their normal day. Like I've seen some get fired. I saw some companies fire some of these podcasters as a result of it, but I don't know. Like I don't know all the details.
I don't know all the details either, but I always have to kind of warn people a lot to tread carefully with this kind of stuff, because the sword that may be, and I can't say it's being wrongfully used, I'm just throwing this out there. The sword that may be used today to cut down the people that you don't like could be used against you tomorrow. And so you always have to be very careful about this sort of stuff, because it could end up swinging back the other way, and people could use, well, you did it to us, to justify doing it back to you. So that's why I'm always egging on caution with this kind of stuff, especially when it comes to civil rights, really, because you could start to impose on people's freedom of speech quite easily if you start to become overzealous with the persecution of voices like that. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And of course, we're going off of the very little knowledge that we know, and everything's allegedly for legal reasons. But still, I hope that kind of does address that well. And the reason why I always say this stuff is because you always have to defend, and this is something that a lot of people don't get. I'm going to explain it. You always have to defend people who don't agree with you, because especially in the free speech kind of a world, especially when it comes to the government, because when the U.S. government for some reason, like let's just go off of it on this direction. Let's say that these people are not affiliated with the Russians at all, and the U.S. government just doesn't like what they're saying, so they're going to try and silence them. So they go and conduct this action, and they actually end up silencing them and putting them in prison. Well, who's to say that when the next election cycle comes around, another group of people get elected who are a complete 180 from the last, and instead of them not liking pro-Russian talking points, they don't like pro-Ukrainian talking points. Now we're going to be under the gun. And I don't want to be under the gun. So I'd rather let free speech exist for everyone than just waiting for the pendulum to swing back and cut my head off in the process. So that's kind of what, I'm saying here, if that makes a good bit of sense, because in the government, the weapon you're using against other people today is easily going to be used against you tomorrow. And you always have to understand that when dealing with anything that pertains to liberties or rights that people have as citizens. And
also another thing as well is I've noticed that I think people are getting very confused about two different things here. There's the court of public opinion, which we're all in right now. We're giving our opinions on the matter. And then there's the court of law. Just because we don't like the people. And I'll be honest with you, I don't really care for actually quite a number of the people here. That's just my personal opinion. Y'all can have your own. I don't personally care for their statements and opinions that they make, me personally. But at the same time, that's the court of public opinion. No matter what they say, if I agree with it or not, they have to be given a fair chance in the court of law. And hopefully, the public opinion is not swaying what's happening in the legal circumstances, because we don't want to get to the point where we're starting to run like tribunals or something like that, where just because we don't like somebody, then they're found guilty just because we don't like them. We want to give them a fair chance at least to defend themselves. And so far right now, only 2 individuals have been indicted that were in charge of this company out there. So I'm not sure how that's going to end up, but they should at least be given a fair shake. And if they are guilty, then they need to be punished for that, obviously, because that is quite a bad thing to be getting funding from a Russian government. That's very bad, and that should be punished to the most extreme extent.
And also, I saw someone bring up something. This is something that's kind of leading me to say this today, is because there was an additional statement made by someone today about how they were going to start appointing additional people to fight disinformation on the internet, and also some other line of thinking. I forgot what it was. It was disinformation and something else. Matthew, maybe you know.
Disinformation. Well, you're saying what the charges were?
No. It was someone who said today, I'm going to appoint people in the Department of Justice to go around targeting disinformation and something else. I forgot what it was.
Yeah, it's like a disinformation committee or something like that. They're going to determine. That's been tried before and it failed, so it's probably just the same thing again.
It probably is, but I want to kind of put this out there for everyone. When the U.S. government starts to come in and starts to tell people what is correct and incorrect, and then also possibly try to take action against people that they're saying is stating incorrect stuff, that generally is compromising the freedom of speech, regardless whether what they're actually going for is right or not. Now, there is a little difference here. In wartime, you actually can suppress freedom of speech. That's something that has been done time and time again in World War I, in World War II. You can see United States v. Schenck in World War I is a good example of that. And you can also see that the United States banned the Nazi Party or the Freedom Bund or something along those lines from the United States in World War II. Because the suppression of speech in a wartime, especially when martial law or anything along those lines has been declared, is entirely legal. And it's generally expected because you're in a war. You can't allow the enemy ideology to tear you apart from the inside out. But in peacetime, though, with the government going around and trying to say what's correct and incorrect, that is horrendous. I mean, that is extremely horrendous from a constitutional standpoint on the rights that all of y'all have to say what y'all want to say. And it's also not a good thing on really just the health of the nation as a whole. Because now you're going to have one group saying what is right and what is wrong, and if that group ever ends up losing an election, what is right and what is wrong just flipped to 180, and now y'all are wrong, and now the government's going to be coming after y'all and persecuting y'all for what y'all say. That's not a good thing. That's a terrible way to run things, and that's kind of why I'm saying you can't go and start some kind of a McCarthyism Red Scare deal with this and start going around and claiming everyone you disagree with is being paid by the Russians, because tomorrow another group might be in charge, and then they're saying that all of y'all are paid by the Ukrainians or whoever is out there paying y'all. So that's not really a good thing to do. That's not a great thing at all. I just saw someone say anything Russia says should be blocked, full stop. Well, hell, I mean, yeah, I would agree with that. If the Russian government is saying something now, I 100% believe that should be blocked. That's not a private citizen in the United States saying something. That is a national entity, an enemy of the United States saying something. They should not be allowed to have a say in the American forum. But at the same time, if a citizen says something in America, and for some reason an American citizen says, oh, I agree with the Russians, I kind of like them. I mean, that's a really stupid standpoint, kind of a dumb hill to die on, really, in an argument. But if that's their opinion, that's their opinion. You can't really come in and try and crush these people or those people for having those kinds of opinions, because they're American citizens. They're entitled to any opinion they want. It's a free country. Kind of like how all of y'all are entitled to your opinion of believing that Ukraine is a good country fighting a good cause. That's y'all's opinion. I mean, you could ask someone else and they could have a completely different opposite take on that. And each of those takes are ones that American citizens can have. They're a right that y'all have to be able to think freely and say what you want and think what you want. And no one, especially the federal government or any state government, should be infringing upon those rights at any time.
And also, I see some people are getting a little bit confused here. I see some people talking about, well, the indictment is not trying to stifle free speech. It's not that, and that is true. The indictment is about something else. That's about people not registered as foreign agents that are receiving money from a foreign government. That's an entirely different issue. But the enforcer is talking about the possibility of creating a disinformation committee to go around determining what is misinformation and what isn't, and then blocking certain speech based on that determination, which goes against pretty much every constitutional part out there. If you interpret the Constitution any way, that pretty much goes against it in every possible way out there. So that idea has been introduced before. It's a really bad idea. If we do something like that, we're going to end up like Venezuela or Brazil. It's just going to happen, and hopefully that does not happen.
Also, another thing, I saw Maher Ali say, opinion plus RT money is not freedom of speech. Yeah, I would agree, because that's being a foreign agent, technically. Well, not technically, that is being a foreign agent. But let me put it this way, all right? You can go and accuse anyone of that. You can literally go and accuse anyone of that, whether it's true or not. And let me remind everyone, because everyone keeps forgetting about this, but this was when it was done the opposite way. Well, actually, it was done almost in the same way. Back in the 50s, there was this guy in the Senate called McCarthy, and everyone knows Senator McCarthy, and for some reason no one ever thinks about this guy anymore. He's just gone to the wayside. But Senator McCarthy was a guy who was a part of the House Committee of Un-American Activities, which was a committee that was set up at the time to be able to find and root out people that were in the government that were committing un-American activities and sympathizing with enemies of the United States, including China or the Soviet Union and many others. And Senator McCarthy started to expand the whole House Un-American Committees thing to include really anyone in America that he disliked, but he would use to go after them the claim that they were red spies working for the Russians to be able to go after them. Kind of similar to what's being heard today. And the guy would have no proof, but he would continuously say, oh, these people are members of the Communist Party, to justify it. Because, if you're a citizen of the United States and you're saying your opinion, that's one thing. But if you're a member of the Communist Party, well, there's the idea you might be a foreign agent. And just running someone through the ringer like that in front of a House committee could end up getting you just mired in the mud so badly you could never get a job again. And so McCarthy would use that on anyone and everyone who said something he disagreed with. And he'd go, these people are communists, they work for the Communist Party, therefore they're foreign agents, we got to go after them. And most of them never were found guilty. But the mud that they were pulled through in the process of that was bad enough. All of them were most of these people were blacklisted for decades from ever having a real job that made any kind of money, and they pretty much lived destitute for decades because of the damage that McCarthy did to their reputations. And no one was exempt from this. He was going after everyone. And the whole thing ended when he finally started to go after the U.S. Army Signal Corps up in Massachusetts. And he ended up bringing someone in front of the congressional panel that they had in this congressional hearing. And the guy said, do you have no shame? And that's what largely killed it, because the guy pretty much started to outline, this is ridiculous. You have no shame. You just go after anyone and everyone you disagree with, no matter who they are, and no matter if they had communist ties or not. And so you have to remember that is usually considered a hallmark in modern America, well, at least a lot of people used to consider it, you don't really hear it a lot these days, of the kind of thing that you're not supposed to do, because you start moving on from actually protecting America from foreign agents and using that as a witch hunt to really try and wipe out people and their ability to say things that you may not agree with. So you always have to be able to try and balance those things, especially here in America, because while it would be a lot more efficient to just sweep anyone aside you may disagree with, America isn't made constitutionally as a country that's supposed to be efficient. It's supposed to be a country, at least in the realm of speech, where people can say whatever they want and largely have a right to say it, unless if they're being paid by a foreign government, and unless if there's really strong evidence for that, then you could try and get them as being a foreign agent. But until then, everyone... Go ahead.
Also, Enforcer, real quick, I see an interesting point being brought up in the chat that I have to mention. I have to bring this up. Some people in the chat saying that the freedom of speech does not include the freedom to lie. It actually does. You can lie as much as you want in the United States, because here's the catch. Somebody has to determine what is a lie and what isn't, because sometimes people say certain things are lies that are actually truth, and sometimes the truth is a lie to some people. That's the way it works. And what these people are proposing here, the people that say freedom of speech does not include the freedom to lie, they're proposing that the government come in and be the arbiter of truth, which is not a good idea whatsoever. That means if I went outside and yelled, oh, the sky is red and it's actually blue, well, then the government can come in and say, no, you're wrong, and you're going to get punished for it. That's not free speech. You can lie as much as you want. The idea behind democracy in our country and free speech is that if someone starts lying through their teeth and they're blatantly lying, then it's up to the people to say, we're not tolerating that, we're not watching it, we're not going to support you, and it'll go away that way by the rule of the people. The government does not get to come in and say, we're going to squash that because we don't like it and we're being the arbiter here. They don't get to do that. That is not democratic whatsoever. So as much as we hate to see people lying out there, it is protected by free speech, and the government should not be getting involved in determining whether or not that is a lie or not. So I don't understand the perspective here with the people saying they want the government to be the arbiter of truth. That never works out, and you'll end up with a situation like Russia if we propagate that.
Also, I see someone saying defamation. Defamation's different. Like you're trying to mire things. There's different kinds of lies that are acceptable and unacceptable. Like if you say something like, the Russians are good people and their country is far better off than America's, that is a flat out lie. I mean, qualitatively, you can tell. Like, that's not even like an opinion. You can tell Russia sucks. I mean, hell, any country would be better than Russia. Even the Chinese are better than Russia. But you can still say that. And the government really has no right to come down and start putting you in a slammer because you said the Russians are better than America. For some reason, you believe that stupidity. But the difference is with defamation, you're saying things to damage someone's character. And that is where the line of freedom of speech is crossed, because you're trying to use speech to damage someone's reputation and character and cause them harm. So that is where a line is crossed. Like you can't say something like, oh, this specific YouTuber, without any evidence whatsoever, is a scammer stealing money. Like, if you said that, someone's got grounds to sue you because you really have no proof. And the only way that you can win a lawsuit like that, it's not innocent until proven guilty. Like, they don't have to prove you were lying about them being a scammer. You have to prove that they are a scammer for you to be able to not get sued for everything you own, pretty much at that point. So that's kind of how that works. There are different.
Also, Enforcer, the bigger point is defamation is a civil matter. That's not a criminal matter. And right now, what people are talking about is criminalizing certain speech if it's a lie. Because, the government's not going to sue you for money. That's not the way it works. All they can do is try to prosecute you criminally for things that they consider lies, if we go along with that line of reasoning that some people are trying to propagate. Defamation is something that will not result in jail time, and it also doesn't involve the government coming down and saying, we don't like what you said. It's about two people going into court, and then the court has to decide who's right and who's wrong between two individual citizens, not between the government and the citizens.
Yeah, that's. Thank you for clarifying that. That is true. I completely forgot that important point right there. But that's something that you have to remember about that. But at the same time, y'all can say whatever y'all want and do whatever y'all want. That's a right that y'all have. I don't know why a lot of people seem to be kind of like bucking that. I'm seeing some people bucking that in the live chat. But y'all have a right to say and do what y'all want. Because at the same time, y'all are saying, oh, these people can't have a right. They can come back and say that y'all don't have a right to say what y'all want to say. Like, I don't know, like maybe they'll click But if you're saying this about other people, because this isn't the normal kind of talk that I have where there's rules for me but not for thee out there in the world in geopolitics and diplomacy. We're talking about America at home. So the rules for thee are for me, like they're for everyone. They're supposed to be across the board. So if you start saying these people can't say this, they're going to come back one day and they're going to say you can't say what you're saying, and they're going to get you for it. That's the difference. That's the difference in between dealing with other countries, and that's the difference in between dealing inside of America with other citizens, is that the pendulum can swing back and get you one day. And that's not a position that you'd want to be in. And I know a lot of people, like, for some reason, are really two-dimensional thinking. They never think about that. But that's how it always works. That's always how it will work. And so you always have to remember, do I want that to happen to me? Because you know, a lot of Germans, to remind everyone, in World War II, we're all for Hitler coming to power. Not a lot of people bring that up, but like, hell, Hitler didn't just become a dictator overnight. He got elected into the position, and then he became a dictator. But a lot of people in Germany went, hey, this guy's pretty good. I'd like for him to be in charge. I think you know what happened to a lot of those people? A lot of those people ended up getting killed one way or another, either in the camps, either on the front lines, being forced to fight for Germany, one way or another. A lot of those people ended up having the pendulum swing back on them. Because a lot of people went, yeah, get those people, the people we don't like, the Jews, the Slavs, the Eastern Europeans, get them all, put them in the camps. And then they all ended up dying in a war. They ended up being executed by the Nazi government themselves for being political adversaries. You got to remember that. The pendulum always swings back. So whenever you say anything in America about, oh, we need to do this to somebody here in America, remember it can always happen back to you. So be very careful about those kinds of statements, and generally be very lenient and very lax. Because if you would like the government to be lenient and lax to you, it should be lenient and lax to people who are not like you, because that's just how it works. So I hope that does address that fairly well. Also, I know someone is about to say this, and also Bill said, you said that like 5 times in 10 seconds. I know, because like I feel like I just have to be like hitting the nail with that one, because it's something that a lot of people, for some reason, are kind of like bucking. I don't get it. But beyond that, let's see. I'm seeing some people, yeah, in the South, the U.S. also love the Nazis. I don't know if that's like a hit at Matthew and me being from Alabama or something, but yeah, they kind of did. That's not really popular these days, but still, you know, kind of a little whack. Anyways, let's see, the speech is free, but the consequences are. You see, I don't really like that mindset either, because that's being extended into the government these days. Like, if someone doesn't like what you say and they stop being friends with you, yeah, that kind of a consequence is the consequence of free speech. But saying something like, oh, you can say something and now you can never get a job again or something like that, that's pretty insane. Like, that should not be the case. You know, that's largely what I would have to say. And I know some people are going to be saying, oh, but what about this? What if you say this? Or what if you say that? Generally in America, you're supposed to be able to say whatever you want. Like, there's not supposed to be actual serious consequences to saying things. Like, yeah, you might not have friends. You know, yeah, you might end up getting in arguments with people. Those are consequences. But sitting there and saying, we have to make sure that this person can never get a job again, that is a little bit too far. And so with that, I hope I've covered that fairly well, at least in my opinion.
Man, we got a bot in here that was sitting here listening to the whole conversation. They said, doesn't lying about Ukraine winning all this stuff hurt them in the future? It's like, I'm not gonna lie, that's a typical bot right there. But I will give them points for creativity with that. They came in during the middle of a discussion about free speech and somehow turned into a bot line. So, damn, that's crazy.
Man, I'm telling you what. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, really quickly, because I have to address this, some people are going to be saying, well, if you believe in free speech so much, why in the world is there no free speech in this chat? You ban people who disagree with you all the time. Well, really, like, who get rude or say pro-Russian stuff. This is not a government institution. I don't work for the government. We're not a federal employee. And on top of that, this isn't an institution of the U.S. government or the state government, for that matter. So we have absolutely no responsibility to protect free speech here on this channel as a point of practice. That it's a pro-Western, pro-American channel. If you're not pro-Western, if you're not pro-American, we ban you. Like, that's just how it works in this channel. So there is rules for me, not for thee, as far as private citizens in the government. Like, we can ban people all day for saying things that are pro-Russian or anti-Western or anti-American. We can do that. But if this was a government channel and this was a government forum, they've got no right to do that, especially if it's a public forum. No one has a right, especially the government, to come in and start moderating what people can and can't say. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And that isn't meant to be pointed at one side or the other, because really both sides are practicing that these days. So I'm not really a big fan of it either way. But I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so real quick, we have a poll running. Let's see here. Honestly, I'm shocked by the results of this poll. I did not expect this. So the question is, does the freedom of speech include the freedom to lie? Only 59% said yes, and a whopping 41% said no. So I'm kind of shocked at how split this poll almost is. And I would have to say this, that currently, as it stands right now, you do have the freedom to lie under the freedom of speech, because you cannot be prosecuted for lying in the United States, and hopefully it stays that way. The only circumstance where if you lie, you'll be criminally prosecuted, or you could be, is if you get put under oath, and then you lie, and then you perjure yourself. That is a situation where you could lie and then be prosecuted by the government and put in jail. But that's the only circumstance right now that could be actually taking place. So I'm solidly in the 59%. On this one. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I'm solidly within 60% on that. You have a right to lie. Like, lying isn't good. It's morally wrong. But at the same time, you can lie. Like, and a lot of people are not getting this. Some people are saying perjury isn't. But perjury happens on court documents. Or perjury happens in court when you're under oath. Like, that doesn't happen out in the world. Like, you can't sit there and say, nothing happened in Tiananmen Square, and then, like, you just end up getting arrested for that, you know, because it was a lie. You can't end up getting arrested for a lie like that. Like, that, it just doesn't happen. That's not how it's supposed to work. Like, you can lie about stuff, like, let's say, oh, gee, let me come up with a good one. Let's say that you get in an altercation with someone, you end up socking them across the jaw. And you were the one who swung. The guy never swung. You just swung at the guy. The cops show up, and then you sit there and say, he swung at me first. You're lying. Yeah. Is that perjury? Actually, it's not. Lying to the cops like that is not perjury, interestingly enough. And that is a lie that you can get away with. Is that right? Not really, but can you do it? Yeah. And so that's kind of how it works. You know, also a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people lie every single day. Also, someone said, try yelling fire in a crowded theater. That's inciting a riot, which is a whole other thing. Because you can say something like, gee, it'd be kind of funny if a fire happened in this theater. You can say that, and that generally is, you know, free speech. But if you start yelling, oh my God, fire, get out, you know, like that is inciting a riot. So you're going to get arrested, not for lying, you're going to get arrested for inciting a riot and freaking people out. So that's kind of a little bit of a clarification right there. Someone said cops lie all the time. Yeah, everyone does. That's just kind of how it works, and there really is no repercussions to lying. That's why a lot of people like to have body cameras and stuff around these days as security cameras, because it kind of catches people when they're lying. But then again, if you're caught lying, you know, like if you say one thing and then a security camera comes out and shows you were doing different later, as long as you weren't lying in court under oath, no one can do anything about that you were lying. They just know you're a liar at that point, and that's about it. So I hope that addresses that fairly well.
Here's another thing. Here's another thing. I don't want to rabbit hole too much on this, but I see some people saying the right to lie is such a bad idea. It's not really the right to lie necessarily. It's just the right to freedom of speech. Because like I said before, someone has to determine what's a lie and what's not a lie. So you have two options here. You can either let people have total freedom of speech like we have right now, where you can go out and say a lie and there's no consequences from the government, that is, but the people might get mad with you. That's one option. And I see some people saying lying corrupts society. It does corrupt society, and that's a part of the risk of allowing people to speak their mind, is sometimes they might lie and sometimes it may lead people down a wrong path. That's just the risk of democracy. But the alternative is much, much worse. Because if you allow the government to determine what's a lie and what isn't, then you have the government locking people down like minions, and people are scared to death to say anything because they're worried that the government might determine they don't like that statement today, and they might say that's a lie, and then all of a sudden you might get your whole life ruined and get locked up and put in prison, which is crazy to me, to risk getting locked up over saying something that is considered a lie subjectively by the government. That is a horrifically bad idea, and honestly, I'm shocked that many people support that. 41%. I'm sort of actually horrified by that many people support that idea. That's kind of wild.
Yeah, and also, like, for a lot of people to be saying that should be illegal or unlawful or something, every single one of y'all in your life has lied? Like, don't kid yourselves. Every single one of y'all has lied about something. Like when your wife comes up and says, "Do I look fat?" And you go, "Nah, you probably were lying one time. Maybe. Hopefully not." Like, that, still, I'm sure a lot of y'all wouldn't want to face the wrath. So then y'all lied about that. Should she be able to press charges against you for maybe a misdemeanor or a felony for lying? Like, no. That would be stupid. On top of that, another lie that a lot of people will say is something like to a person they don't really like that much, but they've kind of been an acquaintance with, and they'll say something like, "Do you like me?" And you'll go, "Of course I like you." That's a lie. And if someone found out, are they going to be able to charge you for a crime that you lied? Really? I mean, that's something that I would have to say it's getting a little silly to start saying that it should be illegal to lie. That's ridiculous. People lie as a fact of life every day. Even just innocent lies, they will say it. And I also saw someone say LOL at the enforcement. But you see, that's the point, though, that I'm trying to make. Like, things like that, simple things like that, simple little lies, you can end up getting in trouble for at that point if lies were truly illegal. So that
also, I saw someone say it should be illegal to lie for money. Well, let's examine that for a second. Remember that kid out there that did the birds aren't real thing? You know, that goofy thing where he said birds aren't real, and he went on this whole parody campaign trying to tell people they're fake, they're not real. Obviously, that's a lie. Birds are real, and I think he was getting donations or something like that. I can't recall for certain, but he was getting money somehow by doing that to fund his operation. Under that circumstance, you should lock that kid up for doing that campaign, for saying the birds aren't real. We should lock him up in prison because it shouldn't be legal to lie for money. That's just, it sounds like it might be good, like we shouldn't let people lie for money. On its face, that sounds good, but the implications, like you have to look further than that. The implications of if you allow that short-term good decision to go any further will mean the total eradication of your right to free speech. And I think that's where people are really not thinking that far. They're not thinking past the short-term decision making. You need to think long-term because that's what's more important.
Also, really quickly, I gotta put this out there for everyone. Isn't marketing like an entire lie? Like, isn't the entire premise of marketing a lie? Like, when you think about it, people lie about everything in marketing, Like, and no one ever gets charged for that. Or better yet, for the current president and the last president, there would be doctors that would come out. I just want to remind everyone of this. This happened for the current president and the last one. There were doctors that came out and went, "This guy is in peak physical and mental shape. He's perfect. I've never seen a better specimen in my life." And I think all of y'all can tell, either health or mental wise, that's a lie. Did that guy ever get criminally prosecuted for that? Either of those doctors? No. Should they be? No. Is it stupid for them to come out and lie like that? I'm sure everyone can agree with that. But still, it's not a criminal offense to lie. Like it's not good. Like, I'll say that. It's morally objectionable. It's morally wrong to lie. Everyone can agree with that. But just because something is immoral doesn't mean that it's illegal. That's starting to get back into the whole realm of the government trying to police morality, which the government isn't supposed to be policing that much, if at all. The government is just supposed to be policing things that have to deal with public order to an extent, and then also trying to make sure that people have a decent quality of life in this country. That's about it. And so with that, I hope that does...
Also, one other thing. I see they also said there are truth in advertising laws. That is true, but that's a civil matter, though. That's not criminal. They can't lock you up for lying in an advertisement, but they can go after you civilly to stop it. They can do that. But it's not criminal. So there's a huge distinction between the two worlds of civil and criminal. One means you go to jail if you get found guilty, potentially, and one means you have to pay money or either stop doing some activity. Two major differences between those two worlds right there. Most things that people are talking about in the live chat are civil, which means you're not going to go to jail for it. So that's a huge distinction. Also, let's see here. I saw one other thing in the live chat I want to address. Let's see if I can scroll back up to it and find it real quick. Let's see. Damn. Oh, yeah, that's right. You're taking my life set. If it was illegal to lie for money, there would be no politicians, LOL.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
entire government would go away. If we're criminalizing lying, the president's going to be locking themselves up, the senators, the representatives, everybody's going to be locking themselves up, and then we're going to have anarchy because then it's ruled by the people. And then who's locking up the politicians? Because then the sheriff and everybody lied too at some point in their life. So, it's just silly to think that it might be reality one day.
And also, let's see here. Seeing someone, let's see, marketing that is a lie is actually illegal right now. What are you even talking about? No. Marketing that is lying to you. Like, this is the best car you'll ever be in. Like, it's perfect. It's amazing. It's incredible. That's BS. Like, the car could be a car, you know, and that's also a subjective thing. They're manipulating you and they're lying to you by trying to make it seem like that's going to be the car of your dreams. It's a lie. It's a car, and should they be charged for that or anything along those lines? I mean, you know, there's people out there who sell pillows, and they'll say that this is the best pillow ever, no doubt about it. That's a lie. It could not be the best pillow ever. Some stupid New York pizza place in New York City, every single damn one of them has the sign, rated #1 best pizza in the world. That is a flat out lie. There's no pizza review board out there. They're putting up that sign to market to you. It's a flat out lie. Are they going to get arrested for that and put in prison? No, they're not, because it's just a thing. It's part of marketing. And so I hope that kind of does address that fairly well. And I also see some people saying those are all subjective statements. But isn't the statement like Ukraine is the best country in the world or America the best country in the world, isn't that a subjective statement as well? Isn't it kind of subjective to say, like, and I don't mean to get all philosophical here because I really stand by my convictions, but just exploring this in it for a minute, isn't it subjective to say that we're on the right side of history? Because to others, we might be on the wrong side of history. That's more so of an opinion at that point. At this point, it's a fact. I'm really firm in my convictions of my opinion that we're on the right side of history and we're doing the right thing. But someone could say that that's a lie. So people can say opinions are lies. And that's the problem, is when you start getting into things like opinions and you start saying that people may be lying about their opinions. You know, that's kind of the thing. You know, and I don't think a lot of people are getting that. Like, an opinion can be considered a lie. Like, I can say, that is the most beautiful car I've ever seen. And someone could say, you're lying. And I'd be like, no, I'm not. But then if for some reason they find you're lying, well, you're in deep water at that point. And you could end up doing that with all kinds of opinions. You could do that with every political opinion out there under the sun that anyone and everyone has. You could do that about people's opinions about other countries. You could do that about anything at that point. And that's where, and a lot of people, you know, are not getting that. That's where you could start getting into some hot water there, because the government starts regulating what opinions are lies and not lies. You start really getting into the entire crux of what free speech really is. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Saw someone say, I'm glad you all aren't lawyers. I'm glad I'm not either. I'm glad we're doing this instead. Being a lawyer kind of sucks. Thank you. That's a compliment. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on from that, and believe it or not, I'm just going to say this right here, we've had some of the best retention during a question segment I've ever seen during that segment right there. Not that we're going to repeat the segment all the time, but just kind of an interesting fact. A lot of people found that interesting, apparently, even though some people didn't like it. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat here. This one goes to Rob S., who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Rob, for that support. He said vacation fund and LSA.
And hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Rob S. And thank you once again for supporting the vacation fund. We're going to have an incredibly fun one, an incredibly great one. And I got to say, a big thanks to you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping to keep on running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one. And also, I'm seeing a lot of people in here. Let's see, how would anyone know what's truth? That's a good question. That's actually a great question. You see, truth is something that society comes together to say means something. So if you say gold is valuable, everyone agrees on that, it's truth. If everyone disagrees on that, that's untrue. Like, everyone comes together and we give the word blue an actual value. Blue is a specific color, and everyone has agreed that that is true. There is only one blue, and it's a certain color on the color spectrum. And so then when you go outside and you look at the sky and you say, the sky is red, it's a lie, because everyone has agreed that the word blue has some sort of a value put to that, and that value is true. And that value also applies to the sky, because the sky is that color. So therefore, sky is blue is a true statement. But if you say the sky is red, it is an untrue statement. It's the same with everything. It's consensus, really society's consensus, that comes in and creates something as a truth, or really it's a group's belief that creates truth. Like everyone on this channel, we take it as true that American interests and Western interests are the best interests out there in the world. The Chinese and the Russians can get bent every day of the week. And that is the truth. We have all collectively come together to assign that Western and American values are truth. They are what's good in the world, and that's what we're striving for. And I'm all for it. But then there's another group of people out there, like the Russians, who think that the Russians' interests are truth. They have all come together and said, Russian interests, our interests, are the best interests in the world, and the Americans and the Chinese can get bent, unless if it's benefiting us. And for them, that's their truth. Like, that is true to them. If you went over there, you would get put in prison because you have gone against their truth. That's how truth works. Like that's how truth is determined, because truth can be different for many different people. Like some people say, to get into a little bit of a more philosophical thing, and some people say opinions, but are these really opinions? Because if you went to an atheist and they said there is no God at all, for them that's truth and that's a fact. Like, that's not an opinion, that is a fact. But if you go up to a Islamic person or a Christian, they're going to say that there is a God, and for them that's not an opinion, that is a fact. Like, that is an unequivocal fact to all three of these people. Different truths, but nevertheless they are all truths none the same. It's just different.
I think that would actually be a fact. I think that would actually not be a fact, that would actually be an opinion, because an opinion can't be proven true or false. So I don't think that would be a fact necessarily.
But the thing with that, Matthew, is that people don't view that. Like, people who believe in God, or people who do not believe in God, do not view that as an opinion. Those people view that as a truth. They view that as a fact. And that's the thing. Like that's what I'm trying to get to here. Is that like, people can assign things that some would consider subjectively as opinion as a fact. And that's the thing that really, you have to consider. Like, for example, let's go with this. Here in America, we say, and I'm trying to, let me come up with one that won't be too controversial, but will still be out there. Here in America, we say that everyone has a right to vote, and everyone has a right to say in their government. That is what we consider in America as a truth, and we largely equate as a fact. And our nation goes around the world acting as though that's a fact. Whenever we go and take over a country like Iraq or Afghanistan, we end up installing a democratic, self-determining government, because that is the only way that people can function, is through a self-determining government. But for a country like China, that truth, that fact is different. The Chinese Communist government is the only way forward. Communist governments are the only way. That is a fact for the Chinese. It's an opinion. Both of those things are opinions. But largely in both countries, those things will be considered facts and truth, for that matter. And so that's kind of what I'm getting at here. You're like, yeah, they're opinions. Like, they're clearly opinions. But if enough people get together and agree on one thing, that opinion then transcends from being an opinion and into a fact. And then you can fight people who believe otherwise.
Or if the government comes down and they're holding the gun and they say, that's a fact. You say, yes, sir, that's a fact. Or you get shot. That's the way it works in Russia, that is. When Putin says, oh, this war in Ukraine is justified. And the people say, yeah, that's right. That's because they're having a gun held to them, and they have no choice but to say that. Some of them truly believe it because they actually believe in the old Soviet ways. And then there's the new crowd out there, the younger people, and a good portion of those in Russia don't believe the war in Ukraine is justified. But if they go around and say that it isn't justified, then they're going to be faced with probably death from Putin. So, that's what they're faced with, and that's the risk when you have government getting involved in that sort of thing, free speech.
That's true. That's what I'm trying to get at here. But let's see. I'm trying to see what people are saying in the chat, because a lot of people are actually talking about this. Let's see. And I saw someone say, God is just as real as blue to me. But then there will be someone, like, just to bring this up, because we don't bring up religion on this channel, but I'm bringing this up as kind of like a learning moment. Some people will say that that is wrong. That is not a fact. That is a lie. There is no God. That is a fact. There is not a single one. And that's a fact. Some people will say that. And that's not an opinion to you or that other person. Those are hardcore facts. And the other person is going against a truth that you believe. That's the thing I'm getting at. And so what if the government, this is what I'm saying here. What if the government says, we're going to start fighting misinformation and lies. And we have determined that there is a God or there is not a God, and anyone who says otherwise is lying, and therefore we can persecute them. Doesn't that seem wrong? That is wrong. Like, I believe that both the religious person of any religion or the atheist who professes no religion would all agree that if the government started to inflict a rule that was against them, like for the atheists, if the government said there is a God, and if you deny that, you are lying because you are denying a fact, we're going to come for you. And if it went the other way around and you were a Christian and the government said there is no God, and if you believe that there is one, you were lying and we're going to come get you. We're going to come persecute you for that. Even if it doesn't mean you go to prison, we're going to make sure that your life is hell because of that belief. That would be the government coming in and trying to subjectively enforce, well, not subjectively enforce, they would be violating freedom of speech. And so that's how that would work. Now, is this an opinion of mine? I just saw someone say, this is enforcer's opinion. Yeah, this is my opinion. But I largely consider this as a truth. And so for me, it almost is a fact of a sort, is that this is how things are supposed to work with the government. The government isn't really supposed to come in and say what's a lie and what's not a lie, because now we're giving a government body that's supposed to be a representative of the people, an arbiter of truth, to say what is a fact of the people and what is not a fact of the people. The government is not supposed to have that right to be able to tell people what is a fact and what isn't a fact, or what's lying and what's not lying, or what they can say and can't say. Because we're supposed to have the right to be able to kind of do what we wish. The government's not supposed to be there to tell you what you can and can't do and what you can and can't say, for the most part, unless if it's very limited instances where that action could be criminal, or against the...
I wish the government was just entirely bureaucratic at this point. Like, if we could just have, like, a body that basically causes the country to run smoothly. Like, for example, public facilities, water, electricity, everything that people need to be able to live basic lives. The government provides that. And beyond that, the rest of the involvement is very limited. And that would be the best case scenario that we could ever be faced in any country.
And also, in agreeing with that, also another thing, I'm seeing a lot of people disagree with this. Here's what I'm saying. Like, to just boil this down to whatever y'all want to take away from it, this is the simple takeaway. Y'all can say and believe whatever y'all want. And if I was in charge of the government, y'all could do whatever the hell y'all want. You can say what you want and do what you want. I'm not going to stop you, as long as it's not anything crazy. You know, like if you start defaming people, that's a civil matter. You could end up getting in trouble for that. If you start yelling there's a fire in a building, yeah, you're going to get arrested for inciting a riot. But as far as your actual opinions on how the government should run, whether they even agree or disagree with mine, at that point, I'm a representative of the U.S. government. I'm the president of the United States at that point. And if you want to say, I don't think the enforcer's running the country well, that's your right. Like, you have a right to say that. If you say, I love the enforcer and I love everything he does, and that is a fact, you have a right to say that as well. I mean, you have a right to say whatever the hell you want to say, because that's your right as a citizen. That's the right that I want to become a president, to be able to say I was the president of a republic where people were able to say what they wanted to say and do what the hell they wanted to do. And hopefully I made all of their lives a little bit better, whether they liked me being president or not, or whether they even cared at all. I made their lives just a little bit better, even if they didn't know. That's all I would care about. That's kind of what I'm working with here. And so I hope that kind of leaves this so that way we can move on back into the questions. But that's really the whole kind of like thing that I'm trying to boil this down to. Out of all that talking, out of all that philosophy, out of, well, not really philosophy, out of all my ramblings, as stupid or as sensible as they were, that's really what I want y'all to take away from it, is that should be the stance, at least in my opinion. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat is going to go to Jason Pate, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jason, for the support as well. We appreciate it. He said, hey, enforcers, everyone knows the tickler I don't know about this one, man. I don't know about this one. Let's see. He said, I haven't been able to contribute lately, and we just bought a house in Helena. I had to get out of Birmingham. Way too hot.
Ooh,
oh,
yeah,
man.
I'm telling you.
And he said, love the show, and LSA.
Hey, and also thank you, Jason Pate, for being from the local area here in Birmingham. I would agree, Birmingham's hot. Like, I went through there recently. Ooh, that's rough in downtown. Like, we don't live in downtown, obviously, but that's a rough place. If you actually lived in Birmingham, the city, God bless your soul. That had to have been a rough time. And I'm happy to hear that y'all moved on out towards Helena, which is down here. Right around here. Actually, the, whatchamacallit? What river is it, Matthew? It's the...
Cahaba?
Yeah, the Cahaba River runs through Helena somewhere. I forgot where. But still, it's wait a minute, hang on, is it right here? No, it's not. It's not. I'm blind. But anyways, Helena is.
Jason Pace said Beham is a war zone. It is a war zone. The enforcer drove through yesterday, and he got to see it himself firsthand.
Yeah, ooh, it was bad. It was really bad. Like, there's no hiding that Birmingham is a really, really rough city downtown. I mean, that place is hell. And I don't like, a lot of people always talk about cities in general, like in other places, and they always go, oh, they're hellholes. Like, man, Birmingham is rough in like every sense of the way. I mean, there's like at this point there's shootings going on downtown like every day. There's droves of homeless people wandering around, and I don't mean like like just homeless people down in their luck. I mean, like, they're like straight up tweakers. Like, I saw one in a bus station the other day when I was driving through, and they were like, they had like they were laying with their back on the ground, and they were stamping their feet into the glass side of the bus stop and like waving their arms around and stuff on the ground and just screaming like in the street. Like, that's wild. It's like you can't even really like use the bus at that stop if you wanted to, because you just got some like raving lunatic there just going crazy. Like, like, I don't know, like some people are gonna be like, oh, don't talk about him like that. Well, he was a crazy person. Like, I can't help that they were homeless or whatnot, but that was absolute insanity that I saw at that bus stop. I was like, I would be scared to even get near that bus stop if I was out of this car right now. But yeah, it was a pretty rough place down there. I haven't been down there a lot. I actually went down there to look around and see what it was like these days, and it's gotten pretty bad. Like, even from the last time we were down there when we graduated from UAB, like last year, it's gotten worse. But yeah, it was rough. But beyond,
it's not just Birmingham though. It's just unfortunate. Like the drug problem across America has gotten so bad. Like, it's also the people you're talking about in Birmingham. A lot of those people are hooked on really bad drugs at this point, and those new ones running around. I think it's called like Trank or something like that. The ones that turn you into a zombie or whatever.
Yeah.
That stuff is causing people to go really, really bad. And now it's like populating every major city around the country now, where all the streets are just full of people out of their minds because of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough. I don't even know what the hell you could really do about it, because it just seems to be getting worse every year. And also, if y'all hear about overdose deaths because of fentanyl specifically, overdose deaths have been going crazy. You can talk to any coroner or anyone who works pretty much as like a state undertaker, and they can all tell you that the amount of death overdoses is just skyrocketing out there right now. It's horrendous, really. But still, it's kind of, just kind of a fact of life. You kind of have to figure out how to negotiate it and what you're going to do about it. But beyond that, it's good to hear that y'all moved out to Helena, because it is a lot better out in Helena. Let's see, it's right outside of Pelham. Pelham's not that bad of a place. So I hope that y'all are doing well out there and things are much safer and quite all right. Thank God y'all didn't move to Bessemer, because I think Bessemer is worse than Birmingham, and especially Fairfield and Inslee. Like, this little area right here, ooh. Oh, that is rough. That's actually these areas, Fairfield and Inslee, have the highest crime rates, violent crime rates in the state of Alabama, sandwiched right in between Birmingham and Bessemer, which are also way up there. Even compared to other cities, like many people don't know this, but y'all hear about Chicago all the time and how Chicago is really rough and it's really bad and everything. Birmingham actually beats out Chicago's murder rate, I think, by a factor of 3 at this point. It's pretty high. So pretty rough stuff. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Big thanks to you once again for the support, and thank you for supporting this channel nevertheless, even though you bought a new house. And I hope y'all are enjoying it too, and I completely understand a house is a huge purchase these days, and so I hope that y'all really enjoy that new house in Helena. I hope you have a fun time down there, and maybe we might pass through there someday, sometime soon. I don't know, maybe we'll run into y'all. But still, a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and thank you for being a local Alabamian. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Jenna, last name Tolls, who put in that 20. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that support. And it said, is Tucker Carlson finally going to get in trouble? No, he's not. He's not mixed up in all this. He's separate. But is a hot dog an orc?
I would say, let's see, is a hot dog an orc? No, a hot dog is an idiot. Really, really stupid idiot. He's not at all affiliated with Russians or anything. He's just dumb. And so, nah, he'll be fine. The government isn't coming for him. Now, should he be gotten for some of the stuff he said about us? That was pure defamation. Yes, 100%. He's hiding from the process server still, crazily enough. But you know, beyond that, that's a whole civil matter side of things. He is as stupid as the stuff he says sometimes, and as stupid as the stuff he does. He does have free speech to a point, but then there's these goofy people on YouTube who think free speech applies to everything, so you could get doxxed and you could get harassed and they could try and end up getting you maimed or killed over there on that channel, and then they'll go, well, I mean, he has free speech. It's like, you're stupid. It's like if anyone says that, they're stupid. Like, doxing is an invasion of privacy. That's actually something that you can end up getting in trouble for. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that part well. And as far as Tucker Carlson getting in trouble, nah, he wouldn't get in trouble. And I've seen a lot of people saying, how much did he get paid to talk to Putin? He didn't probably get paid anything. He probably just asked, and he knew that it was going to make him a load of money because he was talking to Putin, and a lot of people are going to be watching that. Like, a lot of people ended up watching stuff, watching that stuff. So, you know, that's largely the reason. There is a money motivator to it, but he's not getting paid by Putin. He's getting paid by his viewers that are watching. That's largely how he makes his money, is from AdSense and stuff like that. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for supporting and helping this channel to keep on running, Genitals. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to another longtime channel legend, Flash One, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Flash, for that support as well. They said, hey, Enforcer Brothers, and hello, Flash. They said, I hear you are going for a short break, and yes, we are, and I hope you enjoy it, and well-deserved. And hello to the LSA.
And hello, LSA. And also, we are going on a short little trip, and it's going to be a fun one. It's going to be in between the 14th and the 18th, so all of our shows are canceled in between the 14th and the 18th, and we might be back on air on the 19th. But I still got to thank you so much once again for the support, Flash One, and thank you for wishing us the best on this little trip. We're hoping to have a really fun time. We're hoping to come back recharged and be able to get back here and just knock this thing out. Like, you know, just keep hammering on like we've been doing. A lot of y'all say that we are the foremost in news reporting, and I'm glad that we are, and I'm really happy to know that we have the high honor of being that. And I want to make sure that we are recharged enough and have enough energy within us to keep up that kind of claim and that kind of title well on into the future. And so I gotta say, huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and help of this channel to keep on running, and thank you for being an old guard and an absolute legend as well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here is a first ever super chat from Al P, who throws in a $100 donation. Huge shout out to Al for that support. And guess what? He said, brought to you by Al's Roofing and Repair in Michigan, and keep doing what you do. And hey, we got a sponsor on the stream. We're not supposed to do that, but thank you very much, Al, for that support. And also, shout out to you as well. And we appreciate the support, and thanks for helping to keep us running to Al's Roofing and Repair in Michigan. But Enforcer, what say you?
And we got it right here, Al's Roofing and Repair.
Hey, look at that.
So big shout out to you, Al P, and Al's Roofing and Repair in Ann Arbor, in Michigan. Actually, this is right outside of Detroit a little bit. Oh man, you know, that would be cool to know, Alpi. Like, what is Detroit like now that about 2/3 of the people who used to live there are gone and moved out elsewhere? What is it like? Because from what I've heard, it's like the modern day ruins of Rome, because a lot of the buildings just end up kind of like caving in on themselves or just rotting away. I'll be interested to know, like, is it really like that when you drive around in Detroit? But I've heard some pretty okay things about Ann Arbor before. And also, what is this? The Chrysler Proving Grounds. Huh.
The Proving Grounds. They're proving Chryslers out here?
Apparently they are. I did not know that Chrysler's Proving Grounds was near Ann Arbor. That's pretty cool.
I would actually take that job if they had it open.
Man, that would be pretty cool. And also, apparently, there's some dog training nearby. Temporarily closed, though.
You prove your Chrysler on the track, and then you take your dog out on the track on Sunday.
Get him, boy! Just have that thing running around. But beyond that, big shout out to you, and a huge thanks for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It means a lot to us that folks like you really enjoy this channel and want to help it to keep on running with your support. Not a lot of people do. It's not something that we expect people to do either. It's an absolute miracle that people have been supporting the channel for 925 straight days. And I got to thank you so much for supporting this channel for the first time ever, all the way up there from Ann Arbor in Michigan. That is incredibly cool. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here on air right now, keeping doing what we're doing. And so thanks to your support, we will keep doing what we're doing, and thank you massively once again for that incredible support. I believe that is actually the biggest super chat of the night, next to Cons, and I got to thank you so much once again, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. So big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, Al, I think one of your customers in here, somebody said Al does great work. What do you know?
Really?
It's a small world out here. We got apparently one of Al's customers in the chat as well. He's been around the channel for a very long time. They didn't hop in just for the endorsement, by the way. They've been here a while. But anyways, thank you, Al, for that support. And we're moving on to our next one here, which goes to Live Laugh Toaster Bath, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much for that support. They said it for the research fund. And I'd love to hear your take on the findings of the commission, who reviewed the American National Defense Strategy of 2022. And I think we're due for a pimp marmot in LSA.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And let's see if we can go to the 2022 National Defense Strategy. And here we go. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Now that you bring this up again, Live Laugh Toaster Bath, because I think it was you or Amex 10 Speedy Bang Bang that brought this up last night. Let's see. By weaving these documents together, we help to ensure that the entire department is moving forward together, matching our resources to our goals. The strength and combat credibility of the joint force remains central to integrated deterrence. I love how everyone loves to hit the word soup every time they have to be asked for a comment. Like, it's been this way forever, though. Like, it's just a different kind of a word soup these days. But beyond that, the NDS, the National Defense Study, lays out 4 top-level defense priorities the department must pursue. They include defending the homeland, paced to the growing multi-domain threat posed by China. That's a really important one. That's good that that's number 1, because that's really America's big shift that we're having to do these days, is transferring from Europe really into Asia, because that's really where things are going to be from here forward. At least in terms of our adversaries. The economics are still going to be in Europe for the most part, but our actual adversary is going to be in Asia. Deterring strategic attacks against the United States, allies, and partners. I feel like we're kind of falling short on that one these days, but still I would say that's pretty appropriate. Deterring aggression while being prepared to prevail in conflict when necessary, prioritizing the challenge posed by China and the Indo-Pacific region, the Russian challenge in Europe. That's pretty fair. Building a resilient joint force and defense ecosystem. I feel like we have one of the best in the world, but if they want to improve it, there's no harm in improvement. And so I would say that the 4 bullet points that they get out the NDS is pretty solid. That's largely what we say on this channel, actually, is most of these things. So I would agree with it completely. And let's see. And I would love to hear your take on the findings. So that would be my take on the findings. If these are the 4 takeaways, these are actually pretty solid. I think that they're well thought out and clearly really what the kind of direction we're having to move into because of the world that we live in these days here in America and really around the world. And also, I think it is time for a pimp marmot. Don't y'all agree? I think it's time. And let me go get our pimp marmot off of Canva, because our pimp marmot doesn't live on Wikipedia. It lives on Canva. And so, remember, Matthew, I can't zoom in or out on this one, so we just have to look at it, but still. Oh, hello there! Hey!
Hello there, Governor. Can I interest you in some hot dogs down at the hot dog stand? We got the hot dog man. He's being pimped out by that fat marmot.
Aw, man, after they gained about another 140,000 subs, I just stopped talking about them. Aw, man. I can't believe. Aw, man.
Now, Enforcer, I got something for you real quick. We have this pimp marmot right here, which is a Canva creation. It's good. Like, it's really clever. I have something else, a new pimp marmot that's hyper-realistic. Take a look at the Discord chat.
A long-lasting pimp marmot. Okay, let's take a look. Oh! Oh my goodness! Who made this?
I just made it just now. I'm using Grok for that.
No way.
Yeah, look at how realistic that is, man. Also, do you have it on the screen right now? I can't see it on my end.
Yeah, I have it on the screen.
So this was just created. I just typed in the Grok, the Twitter thing, the AI, real quick. That is super realistic. It's got the chains on. It's got the glasses. It's got the red hoodie. I love it.
Man, that's actually pretty freaking good. Like, That's pretty impressive right there. I'm pretty shocked by that. But I don't like that it doesn't have the giant feather pimp hat though. You know, it's kind of missing that.
You want me to add it?
Yeah, see if you can add it because I want the pimp hat with a feather.
A marmot dressed like a pimp with a feather hat?
Yeah, with a feather hat. Put that in.
Let's see what we get. Let's see. I'm going to send it over to you once it creates it. It's pretty fast, actually. Let's see. It's going slow this time, though. I think the feather hat's messing with it.
It's going.
We do have it. It's not as good as the last one, I don't think. But take a look at this.
All right. Let's see what we got here.
So he's coming in right now.
Oh, hello, I'm an industrialist. I own a firearms factory in South London. It's like, what the hell? Dude, that's not a pimp. That's like an industrialist.
This is a live look at a defense contractor when a new war starts.
no, dude, that's the look. That's that infield stare that you got from Lee Enfield when the British government said, actually, World War I started, we're going to need about 5 million Lee Enfields. And they went, come again. It's like, dude, that's the look that they gave.
I like that first one, though. The first one was gold, though, like for the AI, like doing its thing. I like the first one.
Dude, this one looks like it says the Pures, unironically. Like, I'm not gonna lie. It's like,
yeah,
I didn't mess with the Pures. It's like, it's just like, it actually does look pimpy. But the other one, though, this one's like steampunk or industrialist, one or the other. It just doesn't have that pimp feel to it, though. The colors are too demure, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's too something. I don't know. I gotta say though, I'm not trying to like blow smoke up X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, but their AI image generation is on a different level because I've used Midjourney, I've used the Microsoft one. I can't remember. I think it's Microsoft Copilot or something like that. These are clearly the like sharpest looking images I've ever gotten out of an AI. And also, I don't know if y'all know this or not, but there's no restrictions on what you can make with that one. So if you put anything in there, usually like ChatGPT or one of those image generators like Dolly or something like that, they'll tell you can't make certain images because it's either political or something like that. This one's wide open, so it's actually pretty cool. I'm shocked.
I could use it.
What?
I could use it right now, right? Like I could actually go in there and make one.
Yeah, if you go to Twitter right now and you click on the Grok tab, you can go in there and say create an image in the box for Grok, and you can add your text behind it. It'll create it.
Guide me to it. Where is Grok on this? Oh, here we go. It's right there. All right.
And then type in create an image and put your description or your descriptors.
Okay. Create an image.
Well, you got to put a description behind it. Just create a random image at this point.
Oh, I'm sorry. Create an image of a Victorian era marmot soldier holding an MG42. Let's see what it comes up with here. You know, I'm just coming up with something random here because I want to see if this actually works. All right, so it's cooking.
Oh goodness.
Oh my god, it's a marmot with evalement. No way!
Man, dude. That is crazy. That marmot is freaking swole, too. Damn.
It's swole marmot.
That's kind of creepy for real. He's got like a human body, but a marmot head. That's creepy as hell, actually.
So it has like the stock of like a VZ58, the upper of an AR, the lower of a FAL, the front of a G3 sort of, and then the mag of nothing I've ever seen before because it bends backwards, which they're not supposed to do that. But dude, what the hell? This is actually kind of bizarre. It's not an MG42 clearly, but that's still pretty cool. So let's see here. Let me put this in. All right, create an image. Okay, here we go. Create an image of a create an image of a crying Putin. So let's see what we get here. Hang on.
It's gonna be pretty good. They're pretty hyper realistic with faces on this one too. Let's see.
Oh dang, dude! Look at that.
Oh, man, it cheated though. It covered his facial expression. That's like cheating by the AI.
Listen, man. But listen, if we could count all the mistakes, man, that this AI has made so far, I would be able to count it on all 6 of my fingers, like Putin has in this picture.
Oh, man, he's a monster, literally. They got that part accurate.
Dude, he ended up coming out of the Rusa fire, and he said, "Don't look at me. I'm disfigured or something with his 6 fingers." Like, oh, let's see here. Create an image.
Say like create an image of of, let's see, would it get this deep? Would it say like a picture of Putin on the Kerch Bridge on fire?
On a
Not Putin on fire, the Kerch Bridge on fire, that is.
burning Kerch Bridge. I'm sure this picture will end up coming out really befuddled, but let's see what we have. Let's see what we get. Oh my goodness!
Oh my god.
No way! You can make
Click on that, let me
thumbnails
see
for
it.
this thing.
Man, the face isn't perfect, but it's close, and also that looks like a bridge behind it, and I can't like it's pretty real.
Why in the world does he kind of have like the King Charles stare going on though?
Oh my, is this your bridge?
He looks like he's about to say, "Mummy never told me about the burning bridge," something like that. It's like what the hell? It's like that's still wild though. It's kind of close.
I will give X credit for this. X is sometimes a cesspool. Actually, it's quite often a cesspool with a lot of like nuts roaming around on X. But I will give them credit though. The Grok AI image generation is like out of this world. Like no restrictions on it, and you like ChatGPT. I don't think would let you make an image with Putin in it because it would be like sensitive or political or something. It won't do it. Let's see an image of a hot dog man.
Let's see what
this comes up with.
Oh!
He's actually selling hot dogs.
Yeah, look at that. What the hell's up with that hat, though? Is he like a mix of Santa and like Thebes or something? Like, what the hell's going on here? But
I don't know.
But it actually creates an image. Wait a minute. Let's see. Create an image of Hot Dog Man the loser. What if we put that in?
It's gonna be like the clown jester or something holding a hot dog.
Oh, what? Oh my god!
Oh my god!
Oh my god, that is
what
cursed.
in blazes is that?
Oh my god! That is not
Damn.
Hot Dog Man. That is a man that is a
nightmare fuel.
hot dog. Yeah, I don't want to see this anymore. Oh my goodness, that is scary as hell.
Oh.
Oh my god!
Damn,
dude. Oh yeah. Create an image of a CSX. Let's see, the CSX AC 4400. Let's just see if it like can create like a locomotive. That would be interesting if it can.
oh no!
What?
You're gonna get to make locomotive pictures.
Well, we're just gonna see. We're just gonna see. Oh!
Oh my god!
Dude, it
Look
actually
at that.
it's BNSF though. It's not CSX because it's the pumpkin livery. But that's still like that is pretty much an AC 4400 right there. Wait a minute. If it can do that, can it do any? Like, wait a minute, hang on, hold up. I gotta figure this out. Create a picture of an ALC 42 Charger. Will it be able to figure out how to make that just off of this description?
I'll be shocked if it can because that's pretty generic.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a charger. It's like a solar panel charger or something.
Okay, so let me adjust that really quickly. Create an image of a Amtrak train. Maybe that'll be. Create an image of an Amtrak train. I actually forgot to put an. That's proper English, not a Amtrak train.
Oh,
Dude, it actually got Amtrak on the side. Now the livery's not at all correct because this is like a blend of like Phase 5 and 7 put together.
it's picking all the bits out that it thinks is Amtrak. Also, the Amtrak logo is horrific. It's like a roadway on that thing instead of like a train track or something.
Dude,
I don't know about this.
Dude, this is like the Bepis version of Amtrak. This is Amtrak or something like that. Oh man. But let's see here. Create an image of.
Can you do something like crazy, like for example, like pick a devil from history and have Putin shake hands with him or something? Can Putin shake hands with Stalin?
Let's see. Create an image of Adolf Hitler shaking Putin's hand. Okay.
I'll be blown away if it can do this accurately.
Okay, so let's see what we get. Also, Melanie, I think the EMD DDA 40X was.
Oh!
Wait a minute.
What?
That's
Wait a minute.
not Hitler. That's freaking Schultz.
Wait, maybe click on it. Click on the picture. Yeah, that's not really the Putin looks like Putin, but the other guy, I don't know who that is. It looks like a mix of King Charles and somebody else. They really is like picking on King Charles really badly.
Okay, hang on. Create an image of let's see here. Create an image of Stalin. Let's see if it'll make Stalin. But
That's easy work.
But is it though? Is he going to have 9 fingers? Oh,
See, that's easy. It had all the portraits that it took its inspiration from.
yeah. Let's see here. Create an image of. We're gonna have to move on from this, by the way, after this one. But one more. Let's think. Let's brainstorm.
Can you say a picture of Putin driving a Ferrari to The Hague?
A Ferrari to The Hague.
This is random, but let's see what it can do.
Okay, let me. A picture of Putin driving a Ferrari to the Hague. Let's see what we get. And so
Let's see if this is accurate.
Oh,
Wait a minute.
it kind of is.
Click on the picture.
He's in the
That looks like a
passenger
street in
seat.
London. Oh, nice choice of Ferrari, by the way. I think this is the not the 458.
Oh,
No, it's not that one. I think it's a different one, but that's beside the point. But yeah, it's okay. It's okay. This looks like a street in London with like a U.S. building put in the background.
wait, hang on. One more. The Santa Fe Super Chief. I want if it actually did this, I would be impressed. I'm gonna be really impressed. All right. Okay, hang on. Nah, that's not good enough. Not good enough. Not that one. That one I'm not happy with.
Also, it's very cartoonish looking, like the sky and everything.
Yeah, also for some reason, Matthew, this generator loves the AC 4400. Like, insanely much. Like, this is not a Super Chief. Like, but anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on. But that was a really good little segment right there. And I gotta thank you so much, Live Laugh Toaster Bath, for getting us on the Pimp Marmot, because I didn't even know Grok could do that kind of stuff. But anyways, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, once again, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jenna, for the second support of the night. They said that one with the chain looks exactly like Antonio Brown. I don't know who that is, by the way. He said, look at the hands.
And I wanted to say, it does kind of look a little bit like that, because, yes, the hands, which are not marmot-like. Those are human hands. But beyond that, still, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope I did address that quite well. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Also, before we move on, I have to address something that Melanie16040 asked. I answered it really quickly, but let me go get it in full form, because I didn't really get to show this off. The Union Pacific DDA-40X. It was like the biggest diesel locomotive ever made, I think, in history in terms of horsepower. And let me check. Let's see, cylinders. It had 16 cylinders. It was a V16 turbocharged. And it produced a whopping 6,600 horsepower. It's mental. Like, this thing is insane. And you can actually see it right there, right behind a U-boat, which is what they call a certain kind of locomotive. But still, that is pretty cool. Like, you have to admit, that thing is freaking insane in size. There it is again. These things are nuts. I think there was one of them that's preserved in the Union Pacific Heritage Fleet, and then there's, I think, a few more that ended up getting into some kind of a museum somewhere, although they're not really maintained. Also, it's 2 V16s? Oh my goodness! Wow, it is 2 V16s. That's why, and I never knew why, but that's why they have that little split in the middle, isn't it, Melanie? Because they have one V16 up here and the other back there. Man, American muscle! Like, dude, they put the Union Pacific, Matthew, they said, you know what would be better than one V16? And the people at the design bureau said, what? They said, 2 V16s. And they went, dude, the Union Pacific, man, give it to them. They're legends. Like, it's like, I don't even know why the hell they have this obsession with giant locomotives in Union Pacific, but they always have. But they kind of gave that up recently. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Barry Woodward, longtime channel legend, who puts in a $13 donation. And thank you, Barry, for the support. He said, Baker's Dozen, and bring some donut hose on your trip. And we could. Actually, I got donuts for the house yesterday. The house didn't eat them. The people in the house ate them. But they were very good. I haven't had donuts in a very long time. And I just randomly thought, I'm going to get donuts. And I did. And it was good. And I'll probably get them again next year, maybe. But thank you very much, Barry Woodward. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, Barry Woodward. And we will make sure to get a baker's dozen. And hopefully we can bring some donuts or get some donuts on this trip and let y'all know what we think about them. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Barry Woodward, and thank you for being a channel legend and an old guard as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Kid Rock 966, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you, Kid Rock. They said, does Russia maintain/upgrade their nukes, or have they just been sitting around since Soviet times gathering dust?
Largely sitting around. They don't have the budget to maintain all of them, so most of them just sit around gathering dust and deteriorating in condition. Very few of them are actually maintained from what we know. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Kyle McKenzie, who puts in a $10 donation, and also Lazarus 7049, who also put in a $10 donation. And thank you both Kyle and Lazarus for that support, because of course support like that keeps us running and no comments to address. But once again, we appreciate that support. And we also have a $10 super chat from Adam McLean, longtime channel legend, who puts in a 10 as well. He said, best live stream on the internet.
And I thank you so much for the support, Adam McLean, and thank you for saying that it's the best live stream on the internet, and thank you for being here tonight and supporting this channel and helping it keep on running, because folks like you help to make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Will Christensen, who puts in a 10, and thank you, Will, as well, for the support. He said, thank you for keeping track of the most important logistical statistic of the war. How many Bobcats Russia has lost?
Hey!
I know, right, Will? That's the most important one by far. Over 3,000 now. It's tremendous. The Bobcats are very important to me. They hit close to home. I have several models, but thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the support, Will, and I gotta thank you for appreciating that. We're one of the only people who does that on all of YouTube, is keeping track of the Bobcats. It's the most important casualty loss report that there can be. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again. And also for me to weigh in on something really quick, and we're going to make this very quick. I'm not even going to explain this anymore. Hot Dog Man is not a welcome person on this channel. We do not like him. And there's no reason to go further into that. There's very good reasons for that. The guy's threatened our life. So if you feel like that's not a great thing for us to say something about that, you can go. I'm not going to hold you here. You don't have to be here. You can go elsewhere. But if you're going to sit there and act like our dislike of someone who's threatened our lives and our family's lives is unheard of and not good, you can go. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to William P., who puts in a 10. And thank you, William, for the support. He said, sorry I missed the train livery discussion the other night, but take a look at the Union Pacific 4141, George Bush's presidential train.
It's sick. It's sick. It actually is. Union Pacific 4141. Have you seen this one before, Matthew?
I have not.
It is... wow, dang, man. Let me go get a better picture of this thing. It is the presidential train.
Interesting. Oh, wow. That's actually very nice,
Dude,
actually. I didn't know that was a thing.
It's freaking sick. Like, I wish, y'all, if there was a presidential train still, because there used to be back in the day, if there was a presidential train, I wish that this was the livery for the presidential train. There isn't one. This was a special one. And also, this is the one that actually carried George Daddy Bush is what I call him, because there's Daddy Bush and then there's Young Bush. But this is the one that carried Daddy Bush's funeral train through the country to his burial grounds. Well, quite recently, actually. But still, it's a beautiful train. I think the livery is incredible on this thing. And absolutely fly all the way.
I think here, unpopular opinion, or maybe popular, I don't know. We'll find out in a minute. Maybe the president, in addition to having the Air Force One, the plane, they've also got, I believe it's Marine One is the helicopter. They've got the Beast. And they should probably, in my opinion, maybe have a presidential train. Maybe that might bring trains, like train travel in the U.S., back to the public, popular opinion. Maybe people would want to travel on trains if they saw the president also going around on a very nice train. Maybe that would be like a good push toward PR, toward making trains great again.
Maybe. I think it would be cool to see something like that. I mean, that would be so neat. But let's see here. Dang, I gotta go find let's see here. I think there's actually a picture of it being used as the funeral locomotive because it was. Is there? Oh, here we go. Here's the rail car that was actually carrying George Bush's casket back when that happened. They actually put the seal of the president on it, and also took the entire excursion train loadout, and was carrying him to his burial grounds. I forgot where his burial grounds were. That's why I just keep calling it the burial grounds. But still, it was a very interesting. Actually, I think it was a very well-deserved homage because a lot of people will remember that Abraham Lincoln, when he was assassinated, he actually was put on a funeral train and pretty much carried all the way through the country to Indiana, where he was then buried, which is. Well, not Indiana, it's Illinois. I'm sorry, everyone. It's Illinois, which was his home state, and he was buried, I think, in his hometown, if I remember correctly. But still, really neat train. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Big thanks to you once again for the support. And bringing that up, I'm glad that you brought it up, because that's a good one. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have an $8 super chat from Live Laugh Toaster Battle once again. And thank you very much for the second or third support, that is. They said, check out Flinders Street Station here in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, built in 1854, I think. And don't look at the trains. LOC.
Flinders Street Railway Station Police Booth. Hey, wait a minute. Oh, here we go. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one right there. That one's beautiful. That's a.
Oh, I like that one.
That's a classic Victorian style. Also, these kind of look like British commuters right there, like a class, if I'm remembering right, it's like a class 153 or something like that, sort of from the side, or a 186 maybe. But
is this the train the Roo rides?
Dude, Australian people hate those damn animals. They're like, we want them dead. And I mean, if you see them, I would agree. But what a beautiful train station. This is gorgeous, actually. And look, they have carriage rides and everything. It's just like every big city. But yeah, these little things look like average British commuters, honestly. I don't think they're bad at all. But that is one hell of a train station right here. Thank you so much for pointing this thing out and showing it to us, because I've never seen this one before. Definitely one of the greats, in my opinion, so far. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I love to see that a lot of people really are into trains and stations and stuff like that. I love to see it. Really cool. And thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, huge shout out to Natasha Millman, who put in a $5 donation without a comment, and also shout out to Rosello Jr. Valera for also putting in a 5. We also had Sean Heaton, who put in a 5 as well, and said, buy a car. And thank you, Natasha, Sean, and Rosello very much for that support as well. And we appreciate it very much because it helps keep the lights on and also the coffee brewing. And we appreciate it. And our next one here goes to Uncovered Cube, who puts in a 5 and says, hey, I get to be here live tonight and hear y'all twice today. And LSA.
Hey, thank you so much for the support, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and it's good to hear that you were here twice today. I'm so sorry, y'all, about not making the short war videos. We were supposed to make one today. I tried to make one today, and then there was so little news that it only ended up being about 5 minutes long. And we usually want those videos to be about 10 minutes long, or 15 minutes long, somewhere around there, really 10 to 20 minutes. But we're trying to make them, I promise y'all. We haven't given up on those. It's just that it's really hard to make them because really no news comes out by that point of the day. But still, I thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Sir Real User 9, who puts in a 5. And so Spike says hi, and LSA for victory.
And LSA, and thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, I got to thank you so much once again for the support, and LSA to victory all the way. And so with that, thank you once again. We are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Boss Sabasa, the longtime channel legend. And thank you, Boss, for putting in that 60 euro donation. And thank you very much, Boss, for that. As I said, for the important education, and thank you.
Hey, and thank you so much, Bossa Pasa, for enjoying the important education. And I gotta say, I don't think any of the education I give is important. It's cool. I will give it that. It's cool. But important, I don't know about that. But still, I thank you so much once again for the kind words, Bossa Pasa, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is going to go to George Tencher, who puts in a $5 donation. And they said, I hope you guys have a most excellent vacation.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, George. And I hope that we do too. And we will, actually, I have a plan. My dad was actually asking me this today. He was like, are y'all going to like film and stuff on the trip? Y'all should. And I was like, yeah, not really. And then I kind of thought about it, and I was like, yeah, maybe we will. It won't be a lot, though. Like, we're not going to make this like a travel vlog thing, because, you know, we know that a lot of people are here for war news. They're not here for me, and that's completely understandable. But we will be making something to put out on Patreon, at least. And we're going to be making it as well to where you don't have to pay on the Patreon to see it. It'll just be accessible to everyone. But we will still put it out there so that way all of y'all can see it. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support and help of this channel to keep on running. And I also saw Juan and McIntosh say, I know you guys are way above making up news. Yeah, we are, because we make sure that there is some sort of a way that we can corroborate what we say. A lot of people actually do make up their news that cover the Ukraine war stuff, like the train robbery stuff is like flat out lies every time. But with our news, the way I try and make sure that we back up that we're not liars is by having video and picture evidence to back up the stuff we say. Because otherwise, without that, what we are saying could easily be lies. Like a lot of people do. Or, like, better yet, a good example of this, to put this out there quickly, is that when we do things with our channel, like, for example, merchandise, and we say anything's going to Ukraine, we give y'all like a percentage, like 10% of the profits. We make it very clear. And then other channels, they end up doing this a little bit of a nice like white lie thing, where they'll open up a merch store and then they'll say a portion of the profits will be given to Ukraine, but they don't tell you how much. So they end up getting away with making you think that money's going to Ukraine, but it could be like literally nothing. It could be cents for every dozens of dollars. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you once again for the support and help of this channel to keep on running. And with that, we, crazily enough, have about 10 super chats left. So we're going to be speeding this up just a little bit so that way we can make sure to make it to the live chats. And so with that, take it away, Matthew.
So this one goes to Cross, who puts in a 5 and says, over the past 2 years, what has been the most noticeable technological advancement that this war has brought on?
Drones. 100%. It is 100% without a question drone warfare. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Herp Derp NV, who puts in a 5 and says, once in a lifetime, Lukashenko win in downing orc drones. He looks like what you would get if a Walmart manager accidentally ended up as president.
Well, I thank you for the support. I always think of Lukashenko as like that crazy old man that you see on like every street here and there. I always think of him like that. But still, that is a win for Lukashenko, a first, really. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And up next, we've got a first-time super chatter here. It's Pete Watson. He puts in a 10 Australian, and he's from the Australian country, of course. But thank you very much, Pete, for that support. He said, stay safe and enjoy your holiday. I hope it involves a hammock, pina colada, and overlooking a beach, and surfs up, watch for sharks, and portable surfboard, crocodiles. Huh?
Well, I thank you so much for support. Huh? I gotta think.
Crocodiles.
Crocodiles? Well, I don't think there's going to be anywhere we're going. But still, I got to thank you so much for support, Pete Watson. And pina coladas, I don't think we'll have any of those because we don't drink, of course, Pete Watson. You know that, Pete. You know we don't drink. But it may involve a hammock or something close to it. And overlooking a beach, possibly, maybe. But still, I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to watch out for sharks. We will. I'll keep an eye out for them, especially loan sharks. There's a lot of those that actually reach out to us over email, and they'll be like, would you like 400 grand? Just sign away all rights you have to your channel, and you can get 400 grand. And it's like, hey, that's a loan shark, or something along those lines. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to the Secret Vault, and they put in a 5. And thank you very much, Secret Vault, for that support. Sadly, I can't read the first one because it's a little bit political, and we can't get into that. But thank you very much. But we will read the second one, which is a 5 as well. And it said, rewrite you history book. And the whole military was on hardcore drugs. Norman Owner book. Blitzed should open people's eyes, they said.
Oh, that's a fact of life. Everyone knows that. I mean, it's not really news, actually. We knew that back in the war, funnily enough. We actually knew that the Germans were blitzed on meth. And the only thing, though, is that we couldn't tell, like, soldiers going overseas, hey, y'all are going to be fighting methed up Germans. Have fun. We told them, we think the Germans are on some kind of a super pill. That makes them like Superman or something. But we knew it was meth. So what we did is that we told soldiers, well, when you go overseas, make sure to eat your rations. Our rations are made to have the same kinds of vitamins and minerals in them that the German super pill has. Although clearly, a good balanced breakfast isn't meth. Thankfully. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. But that is actually true. The German army in World War II was zooted on something, well, it was a medicinal form of meth called Pervitin. But that is entirely true. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Jenna, last name Tolls. And thank you very much for the support. And they put in something here, which I'm not sure if we're going to read off, but unfortunately, take a look.
Yeah, we can't read that one off. I mean, it's an interesting take, but we can't read it. But still, I thank you so much for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to the Secret Vault once again, who puts in a 5. It says, want to lie and win. Better call Saul. Raffle.
Raffle. And I got to say, thank you for the support, and I got to thank you once again for the support. And if you wanna lie and win, better call Saul. I haven't watched the show, but I know what you're talking about though. But still, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to William P., who puts in a 5. It says, the coroner is the one who arrests the sheriff as part of checks and balances.
And that's actually true, William. Like, did you know that, Matthew? The coroner is the one who has, like, supreme power over really all law enforcement in most states.
At least on paper they do.
At least on paper they do, but we actually know some firefighters, Matthew, from here in this local area, and one of them actually told me that at one point, a sheriff decided to go a little bit too far with messing with a coroner in their duties, and he watched that coroner actually arrest the sheriff on the spot.
Interesting. Where was that?
It was down near a railroad bridge. Some guy was walking home on the railroad bridge, like a goof, and he ended up getting hit by the train, and it turned him into chunks. And so the sheriff, of course, had to show up, first, and be like, oh, yeah, this guy's chunks. And then they called the state coroner's office, and the coroner came out to come and, collect the remnants. And the coroner said, hey, I need you to move your van or your car or whatever, the guy. And the sheriff was like, no, I'm not. And then he just got arrested on the spot by the coroner. So it can happen. Like, not just on paper. It's a real life thing. The coroner is the thing. Like, you can't mess with the coroner. And so with that.
That's kind of interesting. That's kind of like that, like citizen's arrest, because I think technically a citizen has the right to perform an arrest even on a law enforcement official, because technically law enforcement officials, even though they hold an official capacity, they're still nonetheless a citizen, so they can be arrested under that theory. But it's kind of like the same thing. Is a coroner really going to arrest a sheriff like in a big place, like let's say a big city? I honestly highly doubt that, because that would probably end up bad for the coroner. And I hear the enforcer going, maybe on paper they got that right, but I really doubt they're going to exercise that like widespread. It might have happened once or twice, but probably not very often.
But a detective can arrest other officers if they start interfering with crime scenes and stuff. Like, there is at least within the realm of the scope of their duties. A coroner has a right to be able to arrest really anyone, even if they were, say, the governor, or the lieutenant governor or anything like that. If they were getting in the way of their duties, they can have them arrested. That's just kind of that's kind of the rights that they have. It's very interesting because I remember that the specific fighter I'm talking about, and one person who's probably a lurker right now probably knows exactly who I'm talking about. They told me, yeah, if you ever see a coroner, never mess with the coroner, because the coroner has arrest rights over everyone. They pretty much trump everyone in the ability that they have to arrest people, especially within the realm of the scope of their duties. Like if you ever show up and there's a dead body somewhere and they're trying to recover it, and you move your car in the way for some reason of like them getting the chunks back to the car, they're like, hey, move your car, and you're like, no, I'm not. They can immediately arrest you, no questions asked, for interfering. And it's like that's actually wild. But yeah, the coroner can arrest the sheriff. That's actually true. And
also, David Long said, "How in the heck could a citizen actually enforce the arrest of a cop?" Well, that was my point. Like, technically, you can do that. You can try to make a citizen's arrest on a law enforcement official, but you're probably not very wise to do that because once the cop realizes, hey, they're trying to arrest me and take me into custody, I think you might get shot. That's just a hunch I have. I think the cop might shoot you because they're not going to recognize the fact that a citizen might actually have the technical right to arrest a cop. Because, when you hear that right off the bat, you would think you can't just arrest a cop. And that's what the cop thinks too. They're thinking, you can't arrest me, I'm a cop. That's what they think. So, that's what they would go with. So you'd probably be wise not to do that.
Also, really quickly, I actually Googled it. Can a coroner arrest a sheriff? Yes, a coroner can arrest a sheriff in some places of the United States.
In some places, it said?
In the state of Alabama, the only person who can legally arrest a county sheriff is the coroner for that county.
No, that's false on its face because technically a citizen can arrest them.
That's true. But I think they're talking about people in an official capacity, who can arrest who. Not private citizens.
Any officer of the law can arrest somebody who's breaking the law. That goes for the chief of police or whoever. I've seen videos where the chief of police is actually drunk, driving their vehicle, and for example, it was the sheriff, I think, and a deputy came and arrested the chief for driving drunk. I mean, anybody can arrest anybody for committing a crime if you have the legal right to do so.
Let's see here. Only the coroner can arrest a sheriff. In the large majority of southern states, only the coroner can arrest the sheriff. So it looks like that may be the case only down here in the South, and elsewhere people tell the coroner to get bent.
Yeah, they're getting bent here too if they try that thing.
Well, I mean, according to that one story, and it actually didn't happen far from here. I think it was around Childersburg that happened, where the sheriff got arrested or something. Or almost got arrested. I forgot how that story went, but I think he got arrested. But yeah, I mean, from what I was told, coroner's got the supreme authority and arrest power in a situation like that. But who knows? But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, because we are running massively overtime now. Oh my goodness. And so with that, thank you once again for support, William, in bringing that up, because I think that's true, at least here in the southern states of the great United States of America. But there's a lot of things down here that's weird that flies, people just, we can't get into that. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Junebug72 for putting in a 5, VC Slim for putting in a 2, along with Cat Chaser and also Marc-Andre Brunette. And thank you to all 4 of you, Junebug, VC Slim, Cat Chaser, and also Marc-Andre Brunette, for that very generous support. And we appreciate it very much. And we also have a 5 from Keandre Graham, who says, I think that infidelity being widely considered wrong, but not illegal, is perfect examples of your point. Well, it's actually a crime. Adultery is actually a crime some places. I think it might be a crime in Alabama.
It is.
I don't think it's enforced, though. No, I don't think anybody really gets locked up for that. But technically on the books, it is a crime. But I get where you're coming from. But Enforcer, what say you?
Well, it's largely on a state-by-state basis, Matthew. But here in Alabama, it is a crime, and we just don't enforce that law. So you can go around and do whatever you want to do. Is it, well, and this is also another thing, because some people will say it is a fact that sleeping around, which is what that is wrong. And some other people will say it is a fact that sleeping around is perfectly fine and there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's healthy or something like that. People will say different things, and people will say that as fact. Now, those are opinions, but those are facts according to those people. That's their truth that they live with. And so then, does the government come down and say what's right and wrong with that? Well, I mean, back in the day, they actually did. But nowadays, they really don't. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. But that is a good point. Morally, adultery is a pretty questionable thing. But is anyone going to come and stop you? No, because you're a free citizen. You get to do what you want to do. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jaya Turner, who puts in a 2 and says, y'all earned that vacation. Enjoy yourselves. LSA.
And thank you so much, Jaya Turner, for saying that we earn the vacation. I don't think we ever earn a free day, really. But I'll take your word on that because we have to have a free day eventually. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the final super chat of the night before we move on into them live chat questions.
And this one goes to Elka Sir, who puts in a 2 and says, I wonder if we'll ever see rifle drones dogfighting.
You know, that's a great question. I think we will one day. I don't know if it'll be soon, maybe in a year, but we probably will see that eventually happen because I remember way back in the day, Matthew's like, I wonder if they can put a gun on one of those, and then they did. It's like, oh, they can, and I bet you they'll be shooting them down here soon with other rifle drones. But still, thank you so much.
You know, oddly enough, dogfighting is illegal in Ukraine, but dogfighting is illegal in Alabama. You can't fight those dogs.
Man, because everyone's got that dog in them. Oh, man. But still, with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And oh no, someone just asked a question, man. I saw Andy say, something else is also a crime under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Someone said, what is that? Oh no. Just like,
that's a crime, not just in the military. That's a crime everywhere.
Yeah, that's a crime everywhere. It's technically a different form. I can't say the word on YouTube. It's a different form of a kind of assault that has to deal with with carnal knowledge. Hopefully, some of y'all get the jargon there. But that's the other form of it in the other direction. But yeah, anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the live chats. And before we get on into the live chats, I do have to say. Oh, get the hell out of here. I saw you ban someone, Matty. Get the hell out of here. I hope you left someone alone. Yeah, we did, because we were just kidding around. And then they wanted to end up, what's going on? You know, so yeah, we leave them alone. But anyways, with that, we are now moving on into the live chat segment. We're going to be taking the Morse code decoders of the stream and then 3 live chats due to time constraints, and then we're going to be rounding this thing out. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping right into our live chat questions, we have our Morse code decoders of the stream, and tonight we had oh, somebody put something in the live chat. I'm about to try to fight my way through it. They said they didn't say, but anyway, jumping into that Morse code, we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Mills-Sampson, her royal fluffiness, and they said that this evening's Morse code is as follows: Ukraine has stopped the Russians at Pokrovsk, and the Russian steamroller can be stopped in LLT, LSA.
And and that's the sound of money, and y'all got that on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I had to congratulate y'all for getting that correct on the 925th day of the war, and hopefully y'all will continue to get that correct on into the future. And so I hope I addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to John B. Rempel, who says, is Ukraine going to be getting any more F-16s?
Yes, because they've only gotten, I think, 10 of them so far, and there's about 40 more that have to be given to them. So yes, they are going to be getting more of them from the current delivery. I don't know if they're going to be getting more of them, though, on top of the actual amount they've been pledged so far. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one right here goes to John Vanzo, who says, I'm 100% pro-Ukraine. And yes, John is pro-Ukraine. I do know that for a fact. He's been here for a long time. He said, but I don't think they will get all their land back when it's over. And what do you think?
It's a possibility. It's one that a lot of people don't like to hear, but it's entirely possible they probably will never be able to get back the Donbass or Crimea. I have a feeling that at this point they're probably going to get back one or the other, and they're not going to get both at the same time. That might be the case. That would be very unfortunate if so. I would consider that a partial, well, it's a partial defeat for Russia. It's really a draw at that point. Than anything. It's not really a defeat for the Ukrainians. It's not really a defeat for the Russians. It's almost a draw because they both lost something. But I would say, yeah, I don't really see them getting all of their land back. But most of it, hopefully, they will get. And so with that, I hope that does address that very well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And also, let's see, David Myers in the live chat said, adultery is a Class B misdemeanor in Alabama. I said, not great, not terrible. But anyways, moving on from that to our last question of the night. This one goes to Darth Karn, who says, do you think Ukraine will have time to do any major moves militarily before winter sets in?
There's a small window where they can, which is right now, really before the Rasputitsa, and that window is shrinking. I think the big thing that they did was the Kursk offensive, but if they wanted to try and do something else, they may be able to try and launch a little offensive up here near Svatove, because this area, from what we know, isn't really that fortified, and the Ukrainians probably could advance in this area, so that's maybe the only place I could see that happening right now, but who knows? They might have nothing big planned beyond the Kursk offensive, and that was the big thing. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank each and every single one of y'all for enjoying this channel tonight and helping it to keep on running. Of course, I got to thank the 72,120 people who've been here so far tonight and the 9.5 thousand people who were here at the peak. We will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, good night to you all, folks, and thank you all for another great stream once again tonight. It was a tremendously long stream, but long-lasting stream tonight. And, of course, I hope you all enjoyed the almost, 9, 10, 11, 12, almost 4 hours of stream. Long-lasting indeed. But with that, thank you all once again. Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava. Well, you'll see us all tomorrow at the normal stream time once again tomorrow, and maybe midday for a short war summary. Tomorrow's my day, and I will try to make one if there is news to cover. But with that, thank you all, and good night.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.